Imagine the year 1940. Across the Atlantic, the world is engulfed in the flames of war. Europe is in turmoil, and the thunder of conflict grows louder with each passing day. Yet here in the United States, an uneasy quiet hangs in the air. The country is officially neutral, a nation holding its breath, watching from the sidelines as history unfolds in the most dramatic and terrifying way. It's a period often remembered as a sleepy, almost dreamlike state before the storm. But beneath this calm surface, gears were already turning. The nation's leaders, men of foresight and concern, knew that this peace was fragile. They understood that readiness was not a choice, but a necessity. In the corridors of power in Washington, D.C., within the War Department, a quiet but urgent conversation was taking place. The military strategists looked at the modern battlefield evolving in Europe, a battlefield defined by speed, mobility, and surprise. The Blitzkrieg, the lightning war, had shown that old tactics were obsolete. Horse-mounted cavalry and lumbering trucks from the First World War just wouldn't cut it. They needed something new, something different, something that didn't exist yet. What they envisioned was a small, lightweight, go-anywhere reconnaissance vehicle. A mechanical scout that could race across broken terrain, ford streams, climb hills, and endure the harshest conditions imaginable. It had to be tough as nails, reliable as the sunrise, and simple enough to be fixed with basic tools in the middle of nowhere. It needed to be a war machine unlike any other. So in the summer of 1940, the U.S. Army Ordnance Technical Committee drafted what seemed like an impossible set of specifications. The vehicle had to have a wheelbase of no more than 75 inches, a height of just 36 inches, and weigh no more than 1,300 pounds. It needed four-wheel drive, a folding windshield, and the capacity to carry a three-man crew and a machine gun. Think about that for a second. 1,300 pounds, that's less than half the weight of a modern small car. They were asking for a mechanical miracle, a ghost of a vehicle that was both feather-light and iron-tough. And they needed a working prototype delivered in just 49 days. 49 days. It was an audacious, almost ludicrous request, a challenge so daunting it bordered on the impossible. With this list of demands in hand, the Army sent out invitations to 135 different American manufacturing companies. 135 of the nation's industrial powerhouses, from automotive giants to small-scale engineering firms. They cast a wide net, hoping to catch a spark of genius, a flash of innovation that could meet their extraordinary needs. The letters went out carrying the weight of a nation's preparedness. You would think that in a time of looming crisis, with patriotism running high, companies would be lining up, eager to answer the call, right? You would imagine a flood of responses, a flurry of blueprints and proposals from every corner of the country. But that's not what happened. Instead, there was mostly silence, the silence of doubt, the silence of impossibility. Of the 135 companies invited, the vast majority took one look at the specifications and the timeline and simply said, "No. Thank you." It was too risky, the deadline was too tight. The weight requirement was too extreme. It just couldn't be done. The project seemed destined for failure before it even began. A great idea that would die on the drafting table. The call for a new kind of war machine, the very vehicle that the Army desperately needed, was met with a resounding, deafening quiet. The ambition was there, the need was urgent, but the response was almost nothing. But almost is the key word here. In the face of overwhelming odds, when 132 companies had walked away, two small, determined voices spoke up. And a third, a true giant, decided to enter the race at the last minute. Only 3 companies out of the original 135 had the courage, the audacity, or perhaps the sheer desperation to say yes. These were the underdogs, the long shots. The first was the American Bantam Car Company of Butler, Pennsylvania. A tiny automaker on the brink of bankruptcy, Bantam saw this impossible contract not as a risk, but as its only lifeline, its last-ditch effort for survival. The second was Willys Overland of Toledo, Ohio, a more established but still struggling company. They were known for their reliable engines and saw an opportunity to secure a future in military contracts. And the third, entering the fray later, was the mighty Ford Motor Company, an industrial behemoth with unparalleled mass production capabilities. These 3 contenders, a desperate small-timer, a determined mid-ranger, and an industrial giant, were all that stood between the Army's vision and failure. The stage was set for one of the most incredible stories of industrial competition and innovation in American history. A high-stakes race against time, where the fate of a crucial military asset, and perhaps much more, hung in the balance. The sleepy quiet of 1940 was about to be shattered by the sounds of frantic engineering, heated debate, and the birth of a legend. This was the quiet beginning, the initial call to arms that would lead to the creation of a vehicle so iconic, so revolutionary, that its name would become a household word for rugged adventure around the globe. The story of the Jeep doesn't start with a bang, but with a whisper, a desperate request for a machine that everyone thought was impossible. Everyone, that is, except for a handful of visionaries who dared to try. The challenge laid down by the Army was staggering. Let's dive deeper into those numbers. A 49-day deadline to design, engineer, and build a completely new vehicle from scratch. Today, it takes automakers years to bring a new model to market, with teams of thousands of engineers and designers and billions of dollars in development. In 1940, American Bantam, the first to truly commit, had a tiny engineering staff and virtually no money. They were staring down a corporate Goliath in Ford and a respected competitor in Willys Overland. Yet, it was Bantam, the smallest of them all, that truly embraced the urgency. They knew they couldn't do it alone. They reached out to a brilliant freelance engineer from Detroit named Karl Probst. The story goes that Bantam initially contacted Probst and he turned them down. But they were persistent. They called him again, explaining the national urgency, the importance of the project. Probst, a true patriot, agreed to work initially for free, driven by a sense of duty. He arrived in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 17, 1940. The clock was ticking. He reputedly sketched out the initial designs for the Bantam Reconnaissance Car, or BRC, in just 2 days. Working around the clock with Bantam's small team, they cobbled together a prototype using off-the-shelf parts wherever they could. An engine from one manufacturer, a transmission from another, axles from a third. It was an engineering Frankenstein, a testament to pure grit and ingenuity. They were literally building a vehicle against a deadline that seemed to be pulled from a work of fiction. Every bolt tightened, every weld laid, was a race against time. The pressure was immense. The fate of their company and a vital piece of military hardware rested on their shoulders. Meanwhile, Willys Overland was also hard at work. While they initially asked for an extension on the deadline, which was granted, they had a secret weapon, their Go Devil engine. It was a robust and powerful 4-cylinder engine that was far more capable than what Bantam was using. The engineers at Willys knew that while Bantam might win the initial design race, the vehicle that ultimately performed the best would win the war and the contract. So they focused on power and durability, confident that their superior engine would give them the edge in the long run. Ford, with its massive resources, observed from a distance initially. They had the luxury of watching the two smaller companies make their moves, learning from their trials and tribulations. They knew that if it came down to a battle of mass production, no one could beat them. So you have this incredible three-way dynamic. Bantam, the nimble underdog, racing to create a proof of concept. Willys, the engine specialist, banking on performance and power. And Ford, the industrial titan, waiting for the right moment to unleash its production might. It was a crucible of competition, forged by the urgent needs of a nation on the brink of war. The quiet request from the War Department had ignited a fire of innovation that would burn brighter than anyone could have imagined. The sleepy days of 1940 were over. An industrial war had begun, and its first battle was to create the little vehicle that could. The quiet beginning was giving way to a roar of engines and the dawn of an icon. Thank you so much for joining me on this first chapter of an incredible story. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next in this amazing race against the clock. We'll see you in the next one. In the summer of 1940, as the shadow of war lengthened across Europe, the U.S. Army knew it needed a new kind of vehicle. Something light, rugged, and versatile. Go anywhere, do anything machine. They sent out a seemingly impossible request to 135 American automakers. Design a prototype for a quarter-ton, 4-wheel drive reconnaissance car. The catch? They needed it in just 49 days. It was a monumental task, a challenge so steep that only 2 companies even dared to respond. One was the industrial giant, Willys Overland. The other? A tiny, struggling automaker from Butler, Pennsylvania, teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. The American Bantam Car Company. For Bantam, this wasn't just a contract. It was a lifeline. They were the underdog in every sense of the word, a David against a field of Goliaths. With their factory quiet and their finances in shambles, they saw the Army's challenge as their last chance to prove their worth, to keep the lights on, and to contribute to the nation's defense in a way that only they could. Lacking a large in-house engineering team, Bantam made a brilliant move. They reached out to a freelance designer in Detroit named Karl Probst. When they first called him, Probst was hesitant. The timeline was absurd, the pay was uncertain, and the odds were stacked against them. But Bantam's executives were persuasive. They painted a picture not of profit, but of patriotic duty and groundbreaking innovation. Intrigued by the sheer audacity of the project, Probst agreed to help. He arrived in Butler on July 17, 1940, with the clock already ticking. Probst, along with Bantam's small dedicated team, including Chief Engineer Harold Christ, dove headfirst into the project. They essentially locked themselves away, fueled by coffee, determination, and the immense pressure of the deadline. There were no leisurely design meetings or extensive review boards. This was engineering under fire, a race against time where every hour counted. Probst worked feverishly, sketching out the initial designs in just 2 days. His concept was revolutionary in its simplicity and functionality, a compact, open-bodied vehicle with a low profile, a folding windshield, and four-wheel drive. It was stripped of all non-essentials, designed purely for performance and reliability in the harshest conditions imaginable. He envisioned a workhorse, not a show pony. The atmosphere inside the Bantam plant was a mixture of frantic energy and quiet resolve. While the engineers and draftsmen worked around the clock, turning Probst's drawings into detailed blueprints, the factory floor began to stir back to life. Machinists, welders, and mechanics, many of whom had been laid off, were called back. They knew what was at stake. You could feel the shared sense of purpose. These weren't just factory workers assembling another car. They were craftsmen building a symbol of hope, pouring their skill and pride into every weld and every bolt. They worked in secret, the project shrouded in confidentiality to keep their designs from the prying eyes of competitors. The lights in the small Butler factory burned late into the night, a beacon of American ingenuity against the backdrop of global uncertainty. As the days turned into weeks, the prototype began to take shape. It wasn't a sleek, polished machine. It was raw, angular, and utilitarian. They sourced parts from wherever they could, using a modified Bantam engine and axles from a Studebaker. This wasn't about creating perfection from scratch. It was about resourceful, practical problem-solving. Harold Christ and his team were miracle workers, improvising solutions and overcoming one obstacle after another. They hand-fabricated parts, tested components on the fly, and pushed the boundaries of what they thought was possible. Each day brought them closer, the collection of steel and gears slowly transforming into a living, breathing machine. It was a testament to the Bantam spirit, small but incredibly tenacious. The final days were a blur of activity. Every system was checked and double-checked. The engine, the transmission, the four-wheel drive system, everything had to work flawlessly. The team was exhausted, running on fumes, but their spirits were high. They had done it. They had taken an impossible demand and, through sheer grit and brilliance, were about to make it a reality. Finally, on September 21, 1940, with less than 48 hours to spare, the first prototype rolled out of the factory under its own power. They called it the Bantam Reconnaissance Car, or BRC. It looked unlike any vehicle the world had ever seen. It was small yet tough, a mechanical bulldog ready for a fight. With no time to lose, the Bantam team prepared for the most important drive of their lives. Harold Christ himself got behind the wheel to drive the untested prototype 245 miles from Butler, Pennsylvania, to the Army's evaluation center at Camp Holabird, Maryland. The deadline was September 23rd at 5 p.m. Arriving with just minutes to spare, a dusty but triumphant Christ delivered the BRC to the stunned Army officials. They had not only met the deadline, they had exceeded all expectations. They had built a legend from scratch in just 49 days. The little company that could had. This humble prototype, born from desperation and genius in a small Pennsylvania town, was the vehicle that would lay the foundation for the iconic Jeep, a machine that would help change the course of history. The story of the Bantam BRC is more than just a tale of engineering. It's a powerful reminder of what can be achieved when a small group of determined people refuse to accept the impossible. It's a classic underdog story that proves innovation isn't always born in the biggest companies, but often in the hearts of those with the most to prove. Thank you for joining us for this chapter. If you enjoyed this story of ingenuity and perseverance, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss what happens next. We'll see you in the next one. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the incredible story of the Jeep. In our last chapter, we saw the tiny American Bantam car company pull off a miracle, delivering their prototype, the Bantam reconnaissance car, in just 49 days. They met the Army's impossible deadline and created a vehicle that was about to change the world. But here's where the story takes a fascinating and, for Bantam, a heartbreaking turn. Today, we're diving into Chapter 3, Competition and Collaboration. So picture the scene. It's late 1940. Bantam has delivered their pilot model. The Army is testing it, and by all accounts, they're impressed. The little car is zipping around, climbing hills, and doing things no other vehicle its size could. You'd think Bantam would be popping the champagne and signing a massive contract, right? Well, not exactly. The Army had a big problem, and it wasn't with the car itself. It was with the company that built it. American Bantam was a small fish in a very big pond. The company was financially fragile, teetering on the edge of bankruptcy for years. The looming threat of a world war meant the Army needed to think on a massive scale. They didn't just need a few hundred of these new wonder cars. They needed tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands, and they needed them fast. The big question hanging in the air was, could Bantam, with its small factory and limited resources, actually produce the vehicle in the numbers required for a full-scale war? The top brass at the quartermaster corps were skeptical. They saw the genius in Bantam's design, but they couldn't risk the entire military's mobility on a company that might fold under the pressure. So, they made a controversial and, some would say, ruthless decision. They decided to bring in the big guns. Enter Willys and Ford Motor Company. These weren't just any companies. They were industrial titans. Ford had practically invented mass production with the Model T assembly line. Willys Overland, based in Toledo, Ohio, was another major player with extensive manufacturing capabilities. The Army's logic was simple. They loved Bantam's car, but they needed a company with the industrial might of Ford or Willys to build it. Now here's where things get really complex. The Army owned the blueprints to the Bantam prototype. Because the government had funded the development, they argued that the design was their property. So, in an unprecedented move, they handed over Bantam's proprietary plans, the fruit of their frantic 49-day scramble, to their direct competitors, Willys and Ford. You can just imagine the outrage and disbelief at the Bantam offices in Butler, Pennsylvania. They had played by the rules, met every demand, and now their reward was watching their innovation be given away. The Army then invited Willys and Ford to submit their own prototypes, with a not-so-subtle suggestion that they could use Bantam's design as a starting point. This kicked off one of the most unusual phases in automotive history, a strange dance of intense competition and forced collaboration. It wasn't just about building a car anymore. It was a three-way battle for what was shaping up to be the most lucrative military contract in history. Willys Overland was the first to respond. They had initially passed on the Army's tight deadline, but now, with Bantam's blueprints in hand and a more flexible timeline, they jumped back in. Their engineering team, led by a brilliant man named Delmer Barney Roos, saw the potential. They took the basic Bantam layout but knew they had a secret weapon: their engine. Willys had the Go Devil engine. It was a robust, reliable, and most importantly, powerful four-cylinder engine that produced about 60 horsepower. This was a significant jump from the 45 horsepower Continental engine in the Bantam. Roos knew that more power would be a huge advantage in the field. So Willys developed their prototype, called the Quad. It looked a lot like the Bantam, but it was heavier, mostly because of that beefier engine. When they delivered their prototype for testing in November 1940, the Army testers immediately noticed the difference. The Willys Quad was a beast. It had the power and torque that the Bantam, for all its agility, was lacking. Meanwhile, Ford, the giant of the industry, was also working on their version. Always one to do things their own way, Ford developed a prototype called the Pygmy, like the others. It followed the basic Bantam formula, but Ford introduced some of their own innovations. One of the most lasting was the flat, wide hood and the placement of the headlights within the grille, features that would become iconic elements of the future Jeep. Ford also leveraged its incredible production expertise, designing the Pygmy with an eye toward rapid, large-scale manufacturing, using stamped steel parts wherever possible. So now the Army had three different but closely related vehicles: the original Bantam BRC-60, the powerful Willys Quad, and the cleverly designed Ford Pygmy. They put all three through a grueling series of side-by-side tests at Camp Holabird. It was a direct showdown. Each vehicle had its strengths. The Bantam was the lightest and most nimble. The Willys had the superior engine and raw power. The Ford was praised for its driver comfort and features that showed Ford's deep understanding of mass production. What happened next was pure military pragmatism. Instead of picking a single winner, the Army decided to create a hybrid. They effectively said, "We like features from all three of you." They instructed the three companies to share their innovations. It was an extraordinary situation. These fierce competitors were now ordered to collaborate, to pool their best ideas into a single, standardized vehicle. This process created the definitive blueprint for the vehicle we now know as the Jeep. The final design would be a sort of greatest hits compilation. It would largely be based on the Willys Quad, primarily because of its powerful Go Devil engine, which the Army had fallen in love with. The engine was the deciding factor. However, the standardized model would also incorporate features from the Ford Pygmy, like its flat-hood, grille-mounted headlights, and many other smaller details that made it easier to build. And of course, the entire vehicle was built on the foundational concept, the DNA, if you will, of the original Bantam reconnaissance car. Bantam had created the category, and its brilliant layout was the bedrock on which the others had built. So standardized design was emerging. The Army initially ordered a batch of 1,500 vehicles from each of the three companies. These pre-production models were known as the Bantam BRC-40, the Willys MA, and the Ford GP. The M in MA stood for military, and the A for the first model. The G in GP stood for government, and the P was Ford's internal code for an 80-inch wheelbase reconnaissance car. These vehicles were sent out for field testing, and the feedback was used to make final refinements. Ultimately, the Army had to choose one primary manufacturer to ensure parts were interchangeable and maintenance was simple. The contract for the first large production run of 16,000 vehicles was awarded to Willys Overland in July 1941. The deciding factor was that powerful Go Devil engine, combined with Willys' slightly lower bid. It was a massive victory for Willys, securing the company's future and cementing its place in history. But the story doesn't end there. As America entered World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the demand for Jeeps exploded. It became clear that even Willys couldn't build them fast enough. The Army needed a second source, another manufacturer to build the exact same vehicle to the exact same specifications. And so, they turned to Ford. Ford was given a license to build the Willys design, which they designated the GP with the Willys pattern. This is where the collaboration reached its peak. Engineers from Willys and Ford worked together, sharing prints and production techniques to ensure that a part from a Ford GPW would fit perfectly on a Willys MB, and vice versa. This level of standardization was a logistical miracle and absolutely crucial for the war effort. And what about Bantam, the company that started it all? Sadly, they were largely squeezed out. Their factory was too small for vehicle production, so they ended up building the trailers that the Jeeps would tow, along with other components like torpedo motors. It was a bitter pill to swallow. They had invented the Jeep only to watch their bigger rivals get the glory and the massive contracts. The Bantam Car Company never recovered and ceased operations shortly after the war. It's a tragic but essential part of the Jeep's origin story, a testament to how innovation alone is always enough to win in the world of big business and government contracts. So the Jeep that went to war, the vehicle that GS fell in love with and that became a symbol of Allied victory, was not the product of a single company. It was a unique hybrid, born from a crucible of competition and forced collaboration. It had Bantam's soul, Willys' heart, and Ford's manufacturing muscle. This strange and complex parentage is what makes the Jeep's origins so compelling. It wasn't just designed, it was forged. Thanks for sticking with me through that chapter of the story. It's a complicated one, but it's crucial to understanding the Jeep's DNA. Join me next time as we follow the Jeep onto the battlefield and explore how this little car became a legend of World War II. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. See you in the next one. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into one of the most enduring mysteries in automotive history. It's a question that sparked debates in garages, on forums, and around campfires for decades. Where did the name Jeep actually come from? It's a simple four-letter word that evokes images of adventure, ruggedness, and freedom. But its origin story is anything but simple. It's a fascinating tale tangled in military acronyms, popular culture, and the fog of wartime folklore. So buckle up as we travel back to the 1940s to uncover the truth behind the name. The story begins, as you might expect, in the heart of World War II. The U.S. Army needed a new kind of vehicle, something light, nimble, and tough enough to handle any terrain. They put out a call to automakers with a seemingly impossible list of requirements and an even more impossible deadline. After a fierce competition, a design primarily from a small company called American Bantam, but later refined and mass-produced by Willys and Ford, emerged as the winner. This incredible little vehicle was officially designated the quarter-ton, 4x4 reconnaissance truck. A bit of a mouthful, right? It's no wonder soldiers and factory workers started looking for a nickname. This brings us to our first, and perhaps most widely accepted theory, the GP theory. According to this version of the story, the name Jeep is simply a slurred, phonetic pronunciation of the letters G and P. But what did GP stand for? This is where it gets a little murky. Many believe it stood for General Purpose, a logical description for a vehicle that could do just about anything. From carrying troops and hauling supplies to serving as a machine gun mount or an ambulance, it was the ultimate jack-dash of dash-all-dash trades. The Ford-built version of the vehicle was even officially designated GPW, where G stood for government contract, P referred to its 80-inch wheelbase, and W signified it was a Willys design. So you can easily see how soldiers, hearing GP over and over, would naturally shorten and smooth it out to Jeep. It's a clean, logical, and very military-sounding explanation. It makes perfect sense. The factory talk, the official designations, it all points to GP, case closed, right? Well, not so fast. Because there's another, far more whimsical and charming explanation that has just as many devoted believers. And this one doesn't come from an engineer's blueprint or an army manual. It comes from the funny pages. Let me introduce you to a character you might not know. Eugene the Jeep. Long before the vehicle ever rolled off an assembly line, Eugene the Jeep was a beloved character in E.C. Segar's popular Thimble Theater comic strip, starring Popeye the Sailor Man. Eugene wasn't a car. He was a strange, little dog-like creature from the fourth dimension. He had a big nose, a long tail, and some incredible magical powers. His most notable trait? He could go anywhere and solve any problem. Sound familiar? Eugene could walk through walls, teleport, and answer any question with his limited vocabulary, which consisted of one word: Jeep, Jeep. For an entire generation in the 1930s and 40s, the word Jeep meant this magical problem-solving creature. Now picture this. A brand new, almost magical vehicle arrives on the scene. A vehicle that seems to defy the laws of physics, climbing impossible hills, crossing rivers, and getting soldiers out of the tightest spots. What would you call a machine that could seemingly go anywhere and do anything? For many soldiers who grew up reading about Eugene the Jeep's amazing abilities, the connection was instant. They saw this new vehicle performing near-miraculous feats on the battlefield, and they nicknamed it after the only other thing they knew that was so capable and versatile. This theory suggests the name wasn't born from cold, hard military logistics, but from a shared cultural touchstone, a piece of whimsical folklore that perfectly captured the vehicle's almost magical spirit. So we have two compelling narratives. On one hand, the logical factory floor evolution from GP. On the other, the fantastical pop culture tribute to Eugene the Jeep. Which one is true? For decades, historians and enthusiasts have argued passionately for both sides. Proponents of the GP theory point to the official Ford designation and the testimony of some military personnel. It has the kind of straightforward origin story that corporations and historians love because it is neat and tidy. It feels official. But the evidence for Eugene is just as strong, if not stronger, in the court of public opinion. The term Jeep was already in the popular lexicon thanks to Popeye. More importantly, we have documented proof of the name being used in reference to the vehicle long before it became widespread. In early 1941, during a press event, Willys Overland test driver Irving Red Houseman was asked by a reporter what this strange new vehicle was called. He had supposedly heard soldiers at Fort Holabird calling it a Jeep, and that's the name he gave her. He even drove one up the steps of the U.S. Capitol building in a famous publicity stunt, and the headlines that followed helped cement the Jeep name in the public consciousness. Many of those soldiers at Fort Holabird would have been familiar with Eugene the Jeep, The timing is perfect. The popular character was at the height of his fame right when the vehicle was being tested and deployed. It feels less like a coincidence and more like a cultural phenomenon. Even military slang from the time supports the Eugene theory. Before the Willys and Ford vehicle came along, the word Jeep was already being used by army mechanics as slang for any new, untested vehicle or even a new, unproven recruit. They were called Jeeps because, like the comic character, they were mysterious and their true capabilities were unknown. So when this new wonder vehicle showed up, a vehicle that exceeded all expectations, the name Jeep wasn't just a nickname. It was a promotion. It was as if the soldiers were saying, "This isn't just any old Jeep. This is the Jeep." So what's the final verdict? The truth is, we may never know for sure. There's no single notarized document that says, "On this day, we officially named this vehicle the Jeep because of X." The origin is likely a blend of both stories. It's highly probable that some people were slurring GP into Jeep at the same time others were making the connection to the magical cartoon character. The two streams of thought likely flowed together, reinforcing each other until Jeep was the only name that stuck. The military-minded folks could cling to their GP origin, while the more imaginative soldiers could smile, knowing it was named for Popeye's magical pet. This ambiguity is, in a way, part of the brand's enduring charm. The name itself is a piece of folklore. Willys Overland certainly recognized the power of the name. They saw its popularity explode, and after the war, they fought hard to trademark it, officially making the Jeep a civilian brand in 1945. They leaned into the legend, understanding that a name born from a mix of military pragmatism and pop culture magic was far more powerful than any name a marketing department could ever come up with. It had history, it had character, and it had a story or two to tell. So the next time you see a Jeep, whether it's a vintage Willys or a brand new Wrangler, remember the mystery behind its name. Is it a testament to military efficiency, a simple acronym for general purpose? Or is it a tribute to a magical, fourth-dimensional creature that could go anywhere and do anything? Perhaps the best answer is that it's both. The name is as versatile and multifaceted as the vehicle itself. It represents the perfect fusion of gritty, real-world capability and the boundless, can-do spirit of the American imagination. And that, I think, is a story worth telling. What do you think? Are you on Team GP or Team Eugene? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I'd love to hear which origin story you believe. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this little trip back in time, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel for more stories like this. We'll see you in the next one. Welcome back to our journey through the history of an icon. Today in Chapter 5, we re-diving deep into the crucible where a legend was forged, the battlefields of World War II. This is where the little vehicle we've been following wasn't just a machine anymore. It became a lifeline, a partner, a true friend. We're talking about the trials that tested it by fire and how it emerged not just victorious but beloved. Imagine for a moment the vast and varied landscapes of a world at war. From the churning, chocolate-brown mud of the European forests to the scorching, sun-bleached sands of North Africa and the biting, knee-deep snow of the Ardennes. These were the proving grounds. This was where the quarter-ton, four-wheel-drive reconnaissance car, a name too clunky for the heat of the moment, earned its simple, enduring title, the Jeep. Let's picture a scene. A convoy is bogged down on a narrow, rain-slicked road in France. The mud is a greedy monster, swallowing truck wheels whole. Everything grinds to a halt, but then a low growl is heard. A Jeep, its small frame spattered with grime, churns its way off the road, navigating the treacherous, soupy ditch alongside. It forges a new path, carrying vital messages, medical supplies, or a commanding officer to the front. It didn't just get through. It made the impossible seem routine. Its lightness was its strength, its four-wheel drive a stubborn refusal to quit. Now, let's shift our gaze to the endless dunes of the desert. The sun is a relentless hammer, and the fine sand gets into everything: engines, gears, eyes, and lungs. Here, the Jeep became the modern-day camel for units like the British Long-Range Desert Group. They would load these vehicles with fuel, water, weapons, and supplies, disappearing into the vast emptiness for weeks on end. Imagine the scene: a line of Jeeps, their silhouettes stark against the fiery sunset, making their way across a landscape that would defeat lesser machines. They navigated by the stars, their engines a steady thrum in the profound silence of the desert night. The heat would cause tires to burst and engines to overheat, but the simple, air-cooled design of the Go Devil engine was remarkably resilient. It was easy to fix, often with little more than basic tools and a bit of ingenuity. The soldiers trusted it, because they knew it would bring them back. The stories from the soldiers themselves are what truly paint the picture. They didn't just drive the Jeep. They lived with it. It was their transport, their ambulance, their machine gun mount, and sometimes even their field desk or poker table. One veteran recalled using the flat hood of his Jeep as a makeshift operating table for a wounded comrade under the faint glow of a moonlit sky. In those moments of desperation, the vehicle transcended its mechanical nature. It became a silent, steadfast companion. They gave it nicknames, a sure sign of affection. The Peep, the Bantam, but most affectionately, the soldier's best friend. Why? Because it was dependable. In a world of chaos and uncertainty, the Jeep was a constant. It started in the freezing cold when other engines wouldn't. It climbed hills that looked vertical. It crossed streams that seemed impassable. It was a tool, yes, but it was a tool that felt alive, a partner in survival. Think about the psychological impact. For a young soldier, far from home, in a terrifying and alien environment, having something so reliable was a massive comfort. It represented a piece of American ingenuity and toughness that they could count on. There are countless photos of soldiers, weary and grimy, leaning against their Jeeps, sharing a ration or a cigarette. In those quiet moments between the chaos, the vehicle wasn't just a backdrop. It was part of the company. It was the trusty steed that had carried them through the storm and would be ready to go again at dawn. Let's journey to the Pacific Theater. Here, the challenge wasn't just mud, but dense, unforgiving jungle. Trails were non-existent. The Jeep, narrow and agile, could squeeze between trees, ford rivers, and navigate terrain that would have been impassable, even on foot. It hauled ammunition up slippery, vine-choked hills and carried the wounded back down. On islands like Guadalcanal or Okinawa, where every inch was a struggle, the Jeep was the key to mobility. It was the mule, the tractor, and the scout car all rolled into one tough little package. One of the most vivid accounts comes from the war correspondent Ernie Pyle, who wrote extensively about the life of the common soldier. He said, "Good Lord, I don't think we could continue the war without the Jeep." He saw them everywhere, doing everything. He described how soldiers would baby their Jeeps, protecting them, maintaining them, talking about them as if they were a member of the squad. This wasn't an exaggeration. It was a reflection of a genuine bond. The Jeep could take a beating, riddled with shrapnel or caked in mud, and with a little bit of field-level magic, it would roar back to life. And then there was the snow. The Battle of the Bulge, fought in the brutal winter of 1944. Temperatures plummeted, and the snow piled high. In these conditions, the Jeep's four-wheel drive was not just an advantage, it was a necessity. It shuttled commanders between isolated outposts, pulled small artillery pieces into position, and served as a rapid ambulance, racing wounded soldiers back to aid stations through the frozen landscape. Imagine the sight of a Jeep, its canvas top barely visible under a blanket of snow, its single blackout headlight cutting a weak path through the falling flakes, its engine the only sound in a muffled white world. It was a symbol of persistence, a warm-blooded heart in a frozen hell. The Jeep's versatility was legendary. With the windscreen folded down, its profile was incredibly low, making it a difficult target. It could be loaded onto gliders and dropped behind enemy lines. It could have a .30 or .50 caliber machine gun mounted on it, turning it into a swift, mobile weapons platform. It could even be fitted with special wheels to run on railway tracks. There seemed to be no problem that the Jeep couldn't, in some way, help to solve. But beyond the mud, the desert, and the snow, beyond the tactical advantages, the story of the Jeep in the war is a human one. It's a story of trust and reliance. Let's close our eyes and paint one last picture. A dusty road in Italy, late in the war. The sun is setting, casting long shadows. A lone Jeep is parked by the side of the road. Two soldiers sit on its hood, sharing a can of peaches. They're exhausted, but they are safe for the moment. The engine is still warm. The Jeep, their silent partner, has brought them through another day. It sits there, unassuming and coated in the dust of their journey, not just as a piece of military hardware, but as a witness to their struggle and a testament to their endurance. It was more than steel and rubber. It was part of the soul of the GI generation. It was, without a doubt, the soldier's best friend. Thank you for joining us for this chapter. The story of the Jeep is far from over, as its journey from the battlefield to civilian life is just as remarkable. If you enjoyed this look into history, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's next. We'd love to hear your thoughts or any family stories you might have about the Jeep in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious. Hello and welcome back to our series. Today, in Chapter 6, we're diving into the heart of the conflict to explore how a humble, four-wheeled vehicle became an undisputed war hero. This is the story of the Jeep and its legendary service in World War II. As the world plunged into war, the U.S. military needed a vehicle that was light, tough, and could go anywhere. What they got was more than just a machine. They got a symbol of American ingenuity and resilience. From the drawing boards to the battlefield, the creation of the Jeep was a testament to rapid innovation under pressure. Willys, Overland, Ford, and Bantam all played a part in birthing this icon, but it was on the front lines that its legend was truly forged. Picture this, a vehicle no bigger than a small modern car, yet strong enough to handle the most brutal conditions imaginable. The Jeep was the embodiment of can-do spirit. With its simple, rugged design, it was easy to produce and even easier to fix. Soldiers on the ground could often get a battered Jeep running again with basic tools and a bit of creativity. This wasn't just a convenience. It was a lifeline. Over 640,000 Jeeps rolled off the production lines during the war. Think about that number for a moment. That's an astonishing feat of industrial might. A constant stream of reliable horsepower flowing to every corner of the globe where Allied forces were fighting. Each one of those Jeeps was destined for a critical role, a mission that could turn the tide of a battle. But the Jeep was more than just a number. It was a multi-tool on wheels, a Swiss Army knife for the modern soldier. Its versatility was simply astounding. Did you need to tow a 37mm anti-tank gun into position? The Jeep could do it. Did you need to get a wounded soldier off the front line quickly? 2 stretchers could be mounted across the back, turning it into a makeshift ambulance, ferrying the injured to safety with a speed that saved countless lives. On the battle-scarred roads of Europe, from the hedgerows of Normandy to the frozen forests of the Ardennes, the Jeep was everywhere. It served as a command car for officers like General Patton and General Eisenhower, who famously praised it as one of the key tools of victory. It was a scout vehicle zipping ahead of tank columns to reconnoiter enemy positions. It laid communication wire, plowed snow, and even served as a mobile machine gun nest, providing crucial fire support in the heat of an ambush. Its small size and four-wheel drive capability were its superpowers. The Jeep could navigate the narrow, muddy lanes of French villages where larger trucks would get bogged down. It could climb steep, rubble-strewn hills that were impassable to other vehicles. There are incredible accounts of Jeeps being driven up the steps of bombed-out buildings to establish an observation post on the second floor. Its agility made it an indispensable asset in the fast-moving warfare of the European theater, and it wasn't just on land. The Jeep's adaptability extended to the water as well. When a river stood in the way, soldiers would improvise. They'd waterproof the engine, extend the exhaust and air intake pipes high into the air, and drive right through. These snorkel Jeeps became a common sight during river crossings, allowing troops to advance without waiting for bridges to be built. This was American ingenuity at its finest, adapting and overcoming any obstacle in its path. Across the globe in the Pacific Theater, the Jeep faced a completely different set of challenges. Instead of mud and snow, it contended with dense jungles, volcanic soil, and tropical monsoons. Here, its lightweight was a massive advantage. On islands like Guadalcanal and Okinawa, where roads were often non-existent, the Jeep could carve its own path through the thick vegetation. It became the workhorse of the island-hopping campaign. It transported ammunition to the front lines, carried Marines through treacherous terrain, and helped engineers build airstrips in record time. In the sweltering heat and humidity of the jungle, the Jeep's simple, open-air design was a blessing. It was reliable, tough, and never complained. War correspondents fell in love with it. Ernie Pyle, one of the most famous journalists of the war, wrote extensively about the Jeep. He said it did everything, went everywhere. "Good Lord," he wrote, "I don't think we could continue the war without the Jeep." He described how it was as faithful as a dog, as strong as a mule, and as agile as a goat. Through his words, folks back home came to understand just how vital this little vehicle was to the war effort. The Jeep wasn't just a piece of military hardware. It had a personality. It was a symbol that transcended its military function. For the soldiers, it was a trusted companion. It was the ride that brought them hot meals, mail from home, and most importantly, a way out of danger. For the civilians in liberated towns and villages, the sight of a Jeep rumbling down their main street was the first sign of freedom. It represented hope, resilience, and the promise of a new dawn. The Jeep's influence was global. Through the Lend-Lease program, thousands of Jeeps were supplied to Allied nations, including Britain and the Soviet Union. On the Eastern Front, it earned the nickname Ivan Willys and was highly prized for its performance in the harsh Russian winters. It proved that a good design, rooted in simplicity and function, speaks a universal language. Looking back, the legacy of the wartime Jeep is immense. It fundamentally changed military logistics and mobility. It set the standard for a new class of light, off-road utility vehicles that continues to this day. But more than that, it captured the spirit of a generation. It was a vehicle born out of necessity, built with purpose, and driven with courage. From the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of the Pacific, from the deserts of North Africa to the frozen plains of Russia, the Jeep served with unwavering distinction. It towed cannons, it carried generals, it rescued the wounded, and it ferried hope. It wasn't the biggest or the most powerful weapon of the war, but in the hearts and minds of the soldiers who drove it, it was one of the greatest. It truly was the war hero on four wheels. Thank you so much for joining us for this chapter. The story of the Jeep is a powerful reminder of how innovation and determination can make a world of difference. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel for more stories like this one. We'd love to have you with us for the next chapter. See you then. Hello and welcome back to our series. Today, we're diving into Chapter 7, Soldiers and Their Jeeps. This isn't just a story about machines. It's about the deep personal connection that formed between soldiers and their four-wheeled companions during the chaos of war. In the midst of conflict, far from home, small comforts become lifelines. And for countless GIs, their Jeep was more than just a vehicle. It was a partner, a protector, and a piece of home on the battlefield. It was a relationship built on reliability and shared experience, a bond forged in mud, dust, and danger. Imagine being a young soldier, thousands of miles from everything you know. You receive letters, but the world around you is harsh and unforgiving. Your Jeep, however, is a constant. It's the one thing you can rely on to start every morning, to carry you through treacherous terrain, and to get you out of harm's way. This wasn't just transportation, it was a trusted friend. This bond is beautifully captured in the letters soldiers sent home. They didn't just write about battles or the weather. They wrote about their Jeeps. They describe its quirks, its resilience, its uncanny ability to navigate impossible paths. One soldier wrote to his family, "Our little Jeep is tougher than a mule. It never complains, just keeps going. I don't know what we'd do without it." These weren't descriptions of equipment. They were tributes to a partner. The most visible sign of this affection was the practice of naming their Jeeps. Just like sailors name their ships, soldiers christened their vehicles. The names, often painted right on the hood, were a vibrant display of personality and a link to the life they left behind. You'd see names like Betty, Susie, or Georgia Peach, tributes to sweethearts, wives, or hometowns. These names transformed an army-issue vehicle into a personal icon. Other names were humorous or defiant. Jeeps were named Old Faithful, the Bouncing Betty, or Gremlin, reflecting their rugged, sometimes unpredictable nature. Naming the Jeep was an act of humanization. It gave the machine a soul and made it a member of the team. In a world of uniforms and serial numbers, having a Jeep named Peggy Sue was a small but powerful act of individuality. It was a reminder that these soldiers were not just numbers, but people with lives, loves, and a sense of humor. This connection wasn't just sentimental. It was often a matter of life and death. The stories of Jeeps saving lives are legendary. Medics relied on them as makeshift ambulances, racing across shell-pocked fields to evacuate the wounded. The Jeep's small size and agility allowed it to go where larger vehicles couldn't, reaching soldiers in desperate need of help. One veteran recounted a harrowing story. Pinned down by enemy fire, his squad was trapped. Their only hope was a risky dash for cover. He said, "Our Jeep was riddled with holes, but the engine never quit. We jumped in, floored it, and that little machine bounced and slid through the mud, getting us to safety while bullets whizzed past our ears." It wasn't just a machine that day. It saved our lives. Every single one of us. Stories like this were not uncommon. Soldiers used their jeeps to haul ammunition to the front lines, to lay communication wires, and to scout dangerous territory. The jeep was an extension of the soldier himself, brave, adaptable, and incredibly resilient. It took a beating but kept on running. Its reliability under fire earned it an almost mythical status. There's a tenderness in this relationship that's often overlooked in military history. Think about it. A soldier would spend more time with his jeep than with anyone else. He'd maintain it, fix it, and even talk to it. He knew every sound its engine made, every bump and rattle. After a long, exhausting patrol, climbing back into the familiar seat of his jeep was like a small homecoming. The jeep was a witness to their entire experience. It was there for the moments of quiet boredom, the adrenaline-fueled dashes, and the somber journeys. It carried them through triumph and tragedy. This shared history created an unbreakable bond. Many soldiers, when they finally returned home, spoke of their jeeps with a genuine sense of loss, like saying goodbye to a dear friend. Ernie Pyle, the famous war correspondent, captured this sentiment perfectly. He wrote extensively about the GI's life, and he noted how soldiers felt about their jeeps. He saw them not as drivers of a vehicle, but as partners with it. Pyle wrote, "I don't think we could continue the war without the jeep. It does everything. It goes everywhere. It's as faithful as a dog, as strong as a mule, and as agile as a goat." He understood that the jeep had become an integral part of the American soldier's identity during the war. This emotional connection also served a psychological purpose. In the dehumanizing environment of war, caring for something, even a machine, was a way to hold on to one's humanity. Cleaning the engine, patching a tire, or simply patting the hood was a routine that provided a sense of normalcy and purpose. The jeep wasn't just a tool for fighting, it was a tool for coping. Even the design of the jeep seemed to encourage this bond. It was open, exposed, and unpretentious. There were no barriers between the driver, the passenger, and the world around them. You felt the wind, the rain, and the sun. This created an intimacy with the machine and the environment that you just don't get in an enclosed vehicle. You were truly asterisk and asterisk it together. This chapter of history reveals so much about the human spirit. It shows our ability to form connections and find meaning even in the most difficult circumstances. The story of the soldier and his jeep is a testament to resilience, friendship, and the quiet personal moments that define our shared history. It's a tender, human side of a global conflict, reminding us that wars are fought not by machines, but by people. And those people, in their quest for survival and connection, turned a simple utility vehicle into a legend. Thank you so much for joining me for this chapter. The story of the Jeep is a story of ingenuity, but more importantly, it's a story of the human heart. If you enjoyed this journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. We'd love to have you with us as we continue to explore this incredible history. See you next time. Camera opens on archival footage of VJ Day celebrations. People cheering, ticker tape parades, soldiers hugging their families. The mood is joyous and hopeful. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our journey through the incredible history of the Jeep. In our last chapter, we saw the Jeep become an icon of Allied victory, a symbol of resilience and grit on every front. But as the guns fell silent and the world breathed a collective sigh of relief in 1945, a new question emerged. What happens to the hero when the war is over? For hundreds of thousands of soldiers, that hero wasn't just a general or a politician. It was the four-wheeled companion that had carried them through hell and back. This is the story of how the Jeep came home. Transition to photos of soldiers posing with their Jeeps, perhaps with names painted on the side. The tone is nostalgic and personal. Imagine spending years in the most intense situations imaginable, and your one constant, reliable partner was this tough little vehicle. The bond between the soldier and his Jeep was real. They weren't just government-issue equipment. They were confidants, workhorses, and sometimes lifesavers. They named them, they customized them, they cared for them. So when the war ended, the thought of leaving them behind was unthinkable for many. Letters began pouring into the War Department and to Willys Overland, the primary manufacturer. The plea was simple and heartfelt. Can I buy my Jeep? Show an old Willys Overland advertisement or a stylized graphic of a letter. The sentiment was overwhelming. Soldiers wrote about wanting to use their Jeeps back on the farm, for hunting trips in the mountains, or simply to have a piece of their history with them. They saw its potential beyond the battlefield. They knew its strength, its versatility, and its incredible ability to go anywhere. This wasn't just about owning a vehicle. It was about holding onto a symbol of their own survival and the freedom they had fought to protect. The demand was organic, passionate, and it came directly from the heart of the American GI. Cut to footage or images of early Willys Overland factory floors, perhaps showing the transition from military to civilian production. Back in Toledo, Ohio, the executives at Willys Overland were paying close attention. The company was facing the classic post-war dilemma. With military contracts drying up, how do you keep the factories running and the workers employed? The answer was rumbling right in their own assembly lines. They had a product that was already a household name, beloved by a generation of young men who were now returning home to build their lives. The market wasn't something they had to create. It was already there, practically begging for a product. Introduced the concept of the civilian Jeep with early concept sketches or patent drawings. Willys Overland's chief engineer, the brilliant Barney Roos, had already been thinking about this. He knew that the military MB model was a bit too Spartan, too raw for the general public. A civilian version would need some refinements. But the key was to not lose the rugged soul of the original. The challenge was to domesticate the beast without taming it completely. And so the project was born. They would call it the CJ. The letters were simple, direct, and brilliant in their marketing clarity. Civilian Jeep. Show close-ups of an early model CJ2A. Highlight the differences from the military MB. In late 1945, the first production model, the Willys Overland CJ2A, rolled off the line. At first glance, it looked very familiar. It had the same iconic grille, the same boxy shape, the same fold-down windshield. But look closer, and you'd see the evolution. The headlights were larger and no longer recessed. A tailgate was added for practicality, and the spare tire was moved from the back to the side. It even had exterior fuel caps, a small but significant change from the military version, where the tank was under the driver's seat. Inside, the changes were about comfort, relatively speaking. The seats were a bit more cushioned, and instruments were more in line with a typical passenger car. But make no mistake, this was no luxury sedan. It was still a tough, no-nonsense machine. Willys marketed it as the all-around farm workhorse, showcasing its ability to plow fields, run sawmills, and perform dozens of other agricultural tasks using a power takeoff, or PTO, a feature that allowed the engine's power to be used for external equipment. Display vintage advertisements for the CJ2A, showing it on farms, in forests, and being used by families. The early advertisements are a fantastic window into post-war America. They didn't just sell a vehicle, they sold a lifestyle. One ad proclaimed, "The sun never sets on the mighty Jeep," showing it at work in both agriculture and industry. Another called it a powerhouse on wheels. Willys was tapping directly into the American spirit of self-reliance, ingenuity, and hard work. For the farmer, the CJ was a tractor, a truck, and a family car all in one. For the rancher, the hunter, or the surveyor, it was a ticket to the backcountry, a tool that opened up the wild and untamed parts of the country. This was a revolutionary concept. Before the CJ, if you wanted a four-wheel drive vehicle, your options were basically limited to heavy, expensive commercial trucks. The Jeep brought 4x4 capability to the masses. It introduced a whole new category of vehicle and a whole new idea of freedom. This wasn't just freedom asterisk from asterisk tyranny, which it had helped win in the war. This was freedom asterisk to asterisk explore, to build, and to adventure. The Jeep became the mechanical embodiment of American optimism and the pioneering spirit. Show a montage of early CJs in action, climbing hills, crossing streams, pulling plows. The visuals should be dynamic and inspiring. The success of the CJ2A was immediate. It was affordable, costing around $1,000, and incredibly durable. It found a home not just on farms but with construction crews, utility companies, and rural mail carriers. And, of course, with adventurous individuals who just wanted to get off the beaten path. These weren't just buyers. They were enthusiasts. They formed clubs, organized Jeep jamborees, and shared tips on how to get the most out of their incredible machines. The community that had started in the barracks and on the battlefields was now being reborn on the trails and backroads of America. Slow down the pace, perhaps showing a beautifully restored CJ2A in a modern setting, like a car show or a scenic overlook. Looking back, The transition from the Willys MB to the CJ2A is one of the most successful product pivots in automotive history. Willys Overland didn't just sell a surplus war machine. They listened to their audience, understood the deep emotional connection people had with the Jeep, and adapted it for a new era of peace and prosperity. They preserved its core identity, its toughness, its capability, its iconic look while making it just practical enough for civilian life. The CJ2A laid the foundation for everything that would follow. It was the genesis of a lineage that would evolve through the CJ3, the CJ5, the CJ7, and eventually into the Wrangler we know and love today. But it all started here, in the hopeful years after the war, with soldiers who wanted to bring a piece of their history home, and a company smart enough to realize they were holding lightning in a bottle. The Jeep had served its country, and now, it was ready to serve the American family, the American worker, and the American adventurer. The hero had come home, and its greatest adventures were just beginning. Camera focuses on the host. Thank you so much for joining me for this chapter of the Jeep story. It is a testament to how a tool of war can be transformed into a symbol of freedom and fun. What do you think is the most important feature they added to make the Jeep a civilian success? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you're enjoying this series, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'll see you on the trail. Welcome back to our series, where we're uncovering the incredible story of the Jeep. In our last chapter, we saw how the Willys MB, a hero of World War II, was ready to hang up its military uniform. But its story was far from over. The world was changing, and so was the Jeep. This is Chapter 9. The CJ series begins. The year is 1945. The war has ended, and soldiers are returning home, bringing with them stories of a rugged go-anywhere vehicle that never quit. Willys Overland, the company behind this legend, saw an opportunity not just to build cars, but to build a new way of life for post-war America. They envisioned a vehicle for the farmer, the rancher, the builder, the backbone of the nation. And so the concept of the civilian Jeep, or CJ, was born. The very first model to roll off the production line was the CJ2A, which stood for Civilian Jeep Model 2. Version A. It was introduced in 1945 and marketed as the all-around farm workhorse. And it truly was. Willys didn't just sell a vehicle. They sold a complete system. You could get a CJ2A with a power takeoff or PTO at the rear. This ingenious feature allowed farmers to connect all sorts of implements, plows, threshers, buzz saws, you name it. Suddenly, one vehicle could do the work of a tractor, a truck, and a family car. Visually, the CJ2A was a close cousin to its military ancestor, but with a few key civilian comforts. It had larger headlights, a tailgate, and the spare tire was moved to the side. The iconic 7-slot grille made its debut here, replacing the 9-slot version of the MB, a design choice that would become a signature of the Jeep brand for decades to come. Inside, the seats were a bit more comfortable, but it was still a no-frills machine. This wasn't about luxury, it was about utility. It was about getting the job done, no matter how tough the terrain or how long the day. The CJ2A was a symbol of post-war optimism and ingenuity, a tool for rebuilding a nation. As the 1940s drew to a close, Willys continued to refine the CJ formula. In 1949, they introduced the CJ3A. It was an evolutionary step, not a revolutionary one. It looked very similar to the 2A, but featured a one-piece windshield with a vent and a beefed-up suspension to handle even heavier farm work. It was a clear signal that Willys was listening to its customers, making small but meaningful improvements to an already successful design. The CJ3A continued to solidify Jeep's reputation as the ultimate utilitarian vehicle. But the biggest leap in the early CJ family came in 1953 with the introduction of the CJ3B. What made the 3B stand out? Just look at that hood line. It's noticeably taller, earning it the nickname High Hood Jeep. This wasn't just a style choice. The taller grille and hood were necessary to accommodate the new F-head Hurricane engine. This engine was a significant upgrade over the old Go Devil flathead, offering more horsepower and better performance, especially at higher altitudes. This extra power made the CJ3B even more capable. It was still a workhorse, but now it had more muscle for towing, climbing, and powering those PTO implements. The high-hood design gave it a unique, powerful stance that many enthusiasts still love today. The CJ3B was produced for over a decade in the US and even longer internationally, a testament to its durable design and enhanced capability. It was the bridge between the purely agricultural Jeeps and the more recreational models that were just around the corner. And then, in 1955, everything changed with the arrival of the CJ5. If the earlier CJs were tools, the CJ5 was the beginning of Jeep as a lifestyle. By the mid-50s, America was experiencing a new era of prosperity. People had more leisure time and a growing appetite for adventure. They wanted to explore the great outdoors, to go camping, hunting, and fishing in places where normal cars couldn't reach. The CJ5 was designed for them. Based on the M38A1 military Jeep used in the Korean War, the CJ5 featured a new, more rounded body design. The wheelbase was slightly longer, and the overall dimensions were a bit larger than the CJ3B. This resulted in a more stable, comfortable ride. The engine options were also expanded over its production life, eventually including powerful V6 and V8 engines that turned the CJ5 into a real powerhouse. This was the vehicle that truly cemented the Jeep as a symbol of freedom and adventure. It was just as comfortable hauling gear to a remote campsite as it was plowing a field. The CJ5 invited you to leave the pavement behind and discover the world on your own terms. Its production run was staggering, spanning nearly 3 decades from 1955 to 1983, making it one of the longest-running vehicle productions in history. It constantly evolved, adding more comfort and features over the years. But it never lost its core identity, that of a rugged, capable, and fun-loving off-roader. With the CJ5, the Jeep transcended its utilitarian roots. It became an icon of American independence. Owning a CJ wasn't just about having a vehicle. It was about embracing a spirit of self-reliance and exploration. It was for the person who worked hard all week and played hard on the weekend. It was for the adventurer who saw a mountain and thought, I can climb that. From the farmer's friend, the CJ2A, to the high-hood workhorse, the CJ3B, and finally to the adventurous icon, the CJ5, the early civilian Jeep series laid the foundation for everything the brand would become. These vehicles weren't just metal, glass, and rubber. They were partners in work, companions in adventure, and symbols of a rugged, independent lifestyle. They proved that the spirit born on the battlefields of World War II could thrive in the fields, forests, and mountains of a peaceful world. The CJ series wasn't just the start of a new line of vehicles. It was the start of the Jeep legend as we know it today. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the birth of the CJ series. It's a fascinating piece of automotive history that continues to influence vehicle design to this day. What's your favorite early CJ model? Let us know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter in our incredible story of the Jeep. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our journey through automotive history. Last time, we saw the Jeep prove its mettle on the farm and the battlefield. But as America rolled into the prosperous post-war era of the 1950s and 60s, this rugged workhorse was about to discover a brand new calling. It was time for the Jeep to leave the pasture behind and hit the open road. This is the story of how the Jeep became an icon of freedom, adventure, and the great American road trip. As the 1950s dawned, America was changing. A booming economy, the development of the interstate highway system, and a newfound sense of optimism meant people had more time and money for leisure. Families were loading up their station wagons and heading out to see the country. And in the midst of this, the Jeep, particularly the CJ or civilian Jeep, started to look less like a tool and more like a ticket to adventure. Willys Overland, the company behind the Jeep, saw this shift happening. They began to introduce models that were a bit more civilized, while still retaining that tough, go-anywhere DNA. New versions offered more comfortable seats, brighter paint colors, and features that appealed to a recreational audience, not just farmers and ranchers. The Jeep Universal, for example, was marketed as the all-purpose vehicle, equally at home on a paved highway as it was on a rocky trail. This was a genius move. They weren't just selling a vehicle. They were selling a lifestyle. The real magic, however, wasn't happening in the showrooms. It was happening out in the wild. All across the country, a new kind of community was forming, the Jeep Club. These weren't your typical car clubs focused on polish and chrome. These were groups of pioneers, drawn together by a shared love for exploration and the unique capabilities of their Jeeps. They saw mountains not as barriers, but as invitations. They saw deserts not as empty wastelands, but as vast playgrounds. One of the most legendary of these gatherings started in 1953, A small group of Jeep enthusiasts in Georgetown, California, decided to tackle the old Rubicon Trail, a rugged 19th-century wagon route through the Sierra Nevada mountains. This event, which would become the world-famous Jeepers Jamboree, was more than just a drive. It was a statement. It proved that the Jeep could conquer terrain that was impossible for ordinary cars. It was tough, it was exciting, and it perfectly captured the adventurous spirit of the era. This new hobby of off-roading or four-wheeling exploded in popularity. Magazines started featuring stories of incredible Jeep expeditions. People would read about adventurers crossing the scorching Mojave Desert or climbing the peaks of the Rocky Mountains. And they'd think, I can do that too. The Jeep was the key that unlocked the backcountry of America. It allowed people to escape the suburbs and connect with nature in a way they never could before. It wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. It was about the journey itself and the incredible places you could discover along the way. By the 1960s, the Jeep's identity was firmly cemented. It was the quintessential vehicle for the explorer, the camper, the fisherman, the surfer, anyone who heard the call of the wild. Competing manufacturers tried to get in on the action with their own utility vehicles, but the Jeep had a head start and an authenticity that was hard to replicate. It had a genuine military heritage and a proven track record of toughness. When you bought a Jeep, you were buying a piece of that legacy. Willys, which became Kaiser Jeep in this period, continued to innovate. They introduced the Jeep Wagoner in 1963, which was a game-changer. The Wagoner combined the four-wheel drive capability of a Jeep with the comfort and style of a passenger car. It had options like an automatic transmission and independent front suspension, things unheard of in a 4x4 at the time. Many consider it the very first luxury SUV, setting a template that the entire auto industry would follow decades later. It showed that you didn't have to sacrifice comfort for capability. You could drop the kids at school on Monday and be exploring a mountain trail by Saturday, all in the same vehicle. Simultaneously, the classic CJ5, which had been introduced in the mid-50s, became an enduring icon. Its simple, rugged design and nearly unstoppable nature made it a favorite among purists. It was endlessly customizable. Owners would modify their Jeeps with bigger tires, winches, and specialized equipment, making each vehicle a unique expression of its owner's personality and adventurous ambitions. The CJ5 wasn't just a car. It was a partner in adventure. This period also saw the Jeep become a pop culture star. It started appearing in movies and TV shows, almost always as the vehicle of the hero, the rugged individualist who played by their own rules. Think of it, when a character needed to get somewhere remote, to a hidden cabin or a secret beach, what were they driving? More often than not, it was a Jeep. This exposure further solidified its image as the ultimate vehicle for freedom and independence. It was the anti-establishment car for a generation that was starting to question the status quo. So, from the 1950s to the end of the 1960s, the Jeep underwent a remarkable transformation. It evolved from a humble utility vehicle into a powerful symbol of American leisure and exploration. It fostered a vibrant community of enthusiasts who pushed the limits of where a vehicle could go. It pioneered the concept of the comfortable, family-friendly 4x4 with the Wagoner, while the CJ remained the heart and soul of pure, unadulterated off-road adventure. The Jeep wasn't just a part of the American landscape anymore. It was the vehicle people used to explore it. It represented the promise of the open road and the thrill of discovering what lay beyond the pavement's end. It was, and in many ways still is, the definitive vehicle for the free spirit. Thanks so much for watching this chapter of our story. The journey is far from over, as we'll see how the Jeep navigates the turbulent changes of the 70s and 80s in our next episode. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. We'll see you on the trail. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our series. In our last chapter, we saw the Jeep emerge as an undisputed hero of World War II. A vehicle that did more than just transport troops, it embodied the spirit of allied determination. But what happens to a hero when the war is over? Does it simply fade into history? For the Jeep, the end of the war was not an epilogue. It was the beginning of a brand new global adventure. Today we're diving into Chapter 11, the Global Jeep, and exploring how this rugged American icon became a citizen of the world. As the dust of World War II settled, the world was left with a surplus of military equipment, and among the most numerous and beloved were the Willys Overland Jeeps. They were scattered across continents, left behind in the Philippines, abandoned in the fields of France, and parked in depots from North Africa to the Pacific Islands. For many nations, rebuilding after the devastation of war was the top priority. And these tough, simple, and incredibly capable vehicles were a godsend. They weren't just relics of conflict. They were tools for reconstruction. In the agricultural heartlands of Europe and Asia, farmers quickly discovered the Jeep's potential. It could plow a field, haul crops to market, and navigate rough country roads where other vehicles would fail. The Power Takeoff Unit, or PTO, was a stroke of genius, allowing the Jeep's engine to power everything from water pumps to sawmills. It became a tractor, a generator, and a family car all rolled into one. In the Philippines, a unique culture even sprang up around them. Enterprising locals began extending the chassis, adding benches in the back and adorning them with vibrant colors and chrome ornaments. They called them jeepneys, and they quickly became the backbone of the country's public transportation system. A moving, rumbling testament to Filipino ingenuity and a symbol of national pride that persists to this day. Beyond civilian life, the Jeep's military career was far from over. As the world entered the Cold War, armies across the globe sought a light utility vehicle with a proven track record. The United States, through its military aid programs, supplied Jeeps to its allies, solidifying its presence on every continent. The French army used them extensively in Indochina and Algeria. The Israeli Defense Forces relied on them in their early conflicts. From South Korea to South America, the silhouette of the Jeep became a familiar sight in military convoys. But the Jeep wasn't just a vehicle for soldiers. It became a vehicle for peacekeepers. When the United Nations was formed, its observer missions needed a reliable way to traverse some of the world's most challenging territories. Whether monitoring ceasefires in the Sinai Peninsula or delivering aid in the Congo, the unmistakable white-painted Jeeps with the bold UN letters on their sides became a symbol of neutrality and hope. These vehicles and their drivers went where others couldn't or wouldn't go, reinforcing the Jeep's reputation as a tool that could be used to build bridges as well as fight battles. Simultaneously, a new era of exploration was dawning. The post-war world was eager to map its uncharted corners, and the Jeep was the perfect companion for the intrepid explorer. In the 1950s, the Oxford and Cambridge Far Eastern Expedition saw a team of students drive 2 Land Rovers and a Willys Jeep station wagon from London to Singapore, a grueling journey that captured the public's imagination. Adventurers like Al and Pat Pajorski took their Jeep, the Turtle V, on epic expeditions across the Sahara Desert and through the dense jungles of the Amazon. They weren't just driving. They were pushing the limits of what was thought possible. And the Jeep was their trusted partner, climbing impossible inclines and crossing raging rivers. The Jeep's global spread wasn't just organic. It was a deliberate business strategy. Willys Overland understood that the vehicle's appeal was universal. They began licensing its production in countries around the world. In France, Hotchkiss built their own version, the M201. In Japan, a company we now know as Mitsubishi began producing Jeeps, laying the foundation for its own legendary line of 4x4s. India's Mahindra and Mahindra started assembling Jeeps in 1947, a partnership that continues in a different form to this day, making the Jeep-style vehicle a staple of Indian roads. This global manufacturing footprint meant the Jeep wasn't just an American export. It was becoming a local product, adapted and embraced by different cultures. From the sun-scorched deserts of Africa to the frozen tundra of the Arctic, the Jeep proved its mettle. It was used by scientists in Antarctica, by doctors in the Australian outback, and by conservationists protecting wildlife in the Serengeti. Its simple mechanical nature was a huge advantage. In remote areas, far from specialized workshops, a reasonably skilled mechanic with a basic set of tools could fix almost anything that went wrong. This reliability made it more than just a vehicle. It made it a lifeline. The Jeep's design language, the 7-slot grille, the round headlights, the squared-off fenders became universally recognized. It transcended language and culture. It represented freedom, capability, and a can-do spirit. Whether it was being used to herd sheep in the Scottish Highlands, navigate the chaotic streets of Bogota, or embark on a safari in Kenya, the Jeep stood for resilience. It was a vehicle that wouldn't quit, no matter how tough the going got. In this chapter of its life, the Jeep transformed. It shed its purely military skin and became a global citizen. It was a workhorse, a peacemaker, an adventurer, and a symbol of local enterprise. It demonstrated that a great idea, born from necessity, can find a home anywhere in the world and be adapted in countless ways. The Jeep wasn't just spreading across the globe. It was planting roots, becoming a part of the local landscape and the global consciousness. It was no longer just the American hero of the war. It was the world's go-anywhere, do-anything machine. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. The story of the Jeep is a story of adaptation and endurance, and its global chapter is one of its most exciting. If you enjoyed this, please give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'd love to hear your own Jeep stories from around the world in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the legendary history of Jeep. Today, in Chapter 12, we re-tackling a story that's as rugged and winding as a backcountry trail. The incredible journey of Jeep through different owners. It's a tale of corporate shifts, buyouts, and survival that shaped the vehicles we love today. So buckle up, because this is where the business side of things gets really interesting. Our story picks up right after World War II. The hero of the war, the Willys Overland MB, was ready for civilian life. Willys Overland saw the potential and brilliantly transitioned the military vehicle into the CJ, the civilian Jeep. They were the original guardians of the flame, establishing the Jeep as a symbol of freedom and utility for the American public. For nearly a decade, Willys Overland nurtured the brand, introducing the first all-steel station wagon and the Jeepster. They laid the foundation, but the automotive world was changing fast, and bigger players were entering the game. In 1953, a major shift occurred. The industrial giant Kaiser Frazer purchased Willys Overland. Henry J. Kaiser was a visionary industrialist known for building ships, dams, and just about everything else. He saw immense potential in Jeep's rugged appeal. Under Kaiser's ownership, the company was renamed Willys Motors and later Kaiser Jeep Corporation. This era was less about radical reinvention and more about expansion and refinement. Kaiser invested heavily in research and development, broadening Jeep's international presence and pushing its commercial vehicle lineup. Most significantly, this period gave birth to the SJ Wagoner in 1963. This wasn't just another utility vehicle. It was the world's first luxury four-wheel drive SUV, pairing off-road capability with passenger car comfort. It was a revolutionary concept that would define an entire market segment for decades to come. The Kaiser years solidified Jeep's identity beyond just a small, rugged workhorse. It was becoming a versatile family vehicle. But the American auto industry in the 1960s was a battlefield dominated by the Big Three: GM, Ford, and Chrysler. As an independent automaker, Kaiser Jeep found it increasingly difficult to compete. They had a fantastic niche product, but they lacked the scale and dealer network to go head-to-head with the giants. By the end of the decade, Kaiser was looking for a way out of the car business. And that's when another, smaller, but incredibly tenacious automaker stepped in. Enter American Motors Corporation, or AMC. In 1970, AMC, famous for its compact Rambler cars, acquired Kaiser Jeep. Many industry analysts were skeptical. How could this underdog, itself struggling to survive, manage a brand like Jeep? But it turned out to be a match made in automotive heaven. AMC understood being an underdog. They didn't have the budget to create all new platforms from scratch, so they became masters of clever engineering and innovation. The AMC era was arguably one of the most creative and important periods in Jeep's history. They immediately shared components between their passenger cars and Jeep vehicles, which improved quality and reduced costs. More importantly, AMC's engineers truly understood the spirit of Jeep. They introduced the first-ever automatic full-time four-wheel drive system called QuadraTrack in 1973. This was a game-changer, making four-wheel drive accessible and easy to use for the average driver. No more getting out to manually lock hubs. This period also gave us the iconic Cherokee XJ, launched in 1984. The XJ was another revolutionary step forward. Unlike its body-on-frame competitors, it used a lighter, more modern unibody design. It was smaller, more fuel-efficient, and handled better on the road, yet it was still a phenomenally capable off-roader. The XJ was an instant success and is now considered a timeless classic, the true forerunner of the modern compact SUV. AMC didn't just keep Jeep alive, they made it thrive. They respected its heritage while fearlessly pushing it into the modern era. But as the 1980s progressed, AMC, despite the success of Jeep, was facing financial headwinds. They had entered into a partnership with French automaker Renault, but it wasn't enough to secure their long-term future. The company was vulnerable, and another corporate giant was watching closely. That giant was Chrysler, led by the legendary Lee Iacocca. Iacocca saw the future, and it was spelled Jeep. He famously said that the primary reason he wanted to buy AMC was to get his hands on the highly profitable and globally recognized Jeep brand, especially the brilliant new Grand Cherokee that was already in development. So in 1987, Chrysler made its move and acquired American Motors Corporation. The AMC name disappeared, but its spirit lived on through its most valuable asset. For Jeep, joining the Chrysler family was like coming home to the Big Three. Suddenly, it had access to a massive pool of resources, technology, marketing power, and a vast dealership network. Chrysler leadership wisely decided not to meddle with Jeep's core identity. They understood that what made Jeep special was its rugged authenticity. Instead, they poured money into refining and expanding the lineup. The first major product of this new era was the one AMC had started, the 1993 Grand Cherokee ZJ. It was an immediate blockbuster hit, famously debuting by crashing through the glass at the Cobo Center during the Detroit Auto Show. It perfectly blended rugged Jeep capability with a level of luxury and on-road refinement that set a new standard for the SUV market. Then came the Wrangler TJ in 1997. After the mixed reception of the square headlight YJ from the AMC era, Chrysler made the brilliant decision to bring back the classic round headlights. But the TJ was more than just a cosmetic throwback. It introduced the revolutionary quadricoil suspension, replacing the old leaf springs. This gave the Wrangler unprecedented off-road articulation and a dramatically improved on-road ride. It was the best of both worlds and is still considered by many to be a high-water mark for the Wrangler. From Willys to Kaiser, from AMC to Chrysler, each chapter of Jeep's ownership story brought new challenges and fresh perspectives. Willys gave it life. Kaiser gave it a global vision and a touch of luxury. AMC gave it its innovative soul and the iconic Cherokee. And Chrysler gave it the resources to become a global powerhouse. It's a complex, tangled history, but through it all, the core DNA of Jeep, that spirit of freedom, adventure, and go-anywhere capability has not only survived, but has been strengthened. It's a testament to the enduring power of the brand that it could pass through so many hands and emerge stronger than ever. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through Jeep's corporate history. It really shows how business and passion can come together to create something truly lasting. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We love hearing from you, so drop a comment below and let me know which era of Jeep is your favorite. Until next time, keep exploring. Welcome back to our journey through automotive history. Last time, we explored the incredible legacy of the CJ series, a line of vehicles that defined off-roading for decades. But as the 1980s dawned, the world was changing, and so were the demands of drivers. The market was calling for something that blended the rugged, go-anywhere spirit of the CJ with more of the creature comforts and on-road manners people expected from their daily drivers. It was a tall order. How do you modernize an icon without losing its soul? Well, in 1986, American Motors Corporation, or AMC, which owned Jeep at the time, delivered their answer. And that answer, my friends, was the birth of a legend, the Jeep Wrangler, codenamed the YJ. So, picture this. It's 1986. Top Gun is dominating the box office. Walkmans are the must-have gadget, and big hair is everywhere. And rolling into this vibrant decade is a vehicle that looks both familiar and refreshingly new. The YJ Wrangler was a deliberate evolution. It was designed to bridge the gap between the battlefield-born CJ and the modern suburban driveway. The most striking, and for some the most controversial, change was right up front: the headlights. For the first time, a civilian Jeep sported rectangular, or square, headlights instead of the classic round ones. This was a bold move, a clear signal that this was a new era for Jeep. It was a stylistic choice that mirrored the angular, modern designs of the 80s, but for die-hard purists, it was almost heresy. They lovingly, or perhaps not so lovingly, nicknamed it the yuppie Jeep. But whether you loved them or hated them, Those square headlights made the G instantly recognizable. Beyond the headlights, the YJ was a fascinating mix of old and new. It retained that iconic boxy silhouette that screamed Jeep. The classic 7-slot grille was still there, a nod to its proud heritage. And most importantly, it kept the features that made a Jeep, the fold-down windshield, allowing for a truly immersive, open-air experience and the removable doors. This wasn't just a feature, it was a statement. It said, this vehicle is about freedom, adventure, and connecting with the world around you. You could strip it down to its bare essentials, feel the wind, and tackle the trails just like its predecessors. It was a vehicle that invited you to play, to get a little muddy, to explore. But underneath that familiar rugged exterior, the YJ was a different beast entirely. AMC engineers spent years developing it, and their focus was on improving stability, safety, and comfort. The YJ was wider and had a slightly lower center of gravity than the CJ7 it replaced. It featured wider leaf springs, and for the first time, track bars and sway bars were added to the suspension. Now, what does all that mean? It means the YJ handled significantly better on paved roads. That notorious Jeep wonder of the older CJs was tamed. It was more stable in corners and more comfortable on long highway drives, making it a much more practical choice for someone who needed one vehicle to do it all, commute to work during the week and hit the trails on the weekend. Inside the cabin, the transformation was even more dramatic. The Spartan, purely functional interior of the CJ was gone. The YJ featured a more modern, car-like dashboard. The gauges were clearer, the controls were more ergonomic, and amenities like air conditioning became available options. It was a more civilized space designed for a driver who wasn't necessarily a seasoned off-road veteran. But crucially, it was still tough. The materials were durable, and you could still hose out the floor after a day of fun, thanks to the removable carpets and drain plugs. It was this blend of newfound comfort and retained toughness that was the YJ's magic formula. It successfully broadened Jeep's appeal beyond the hardcore off-road community to a much wider audience. The YJ wasn't just a new model, it was a promise. It represented the idea that you didn't have to choose between a capable off-roader and a comfortable daily driver. You could have both. It was the vehicle for a new generation. The grandsons and granddaughters of the soldiers who drove the original Willys MB in World War II could now get behind the wheel of a vehicle that carried that same DNA, that same spirit of adventure. They were driving their heritage, but it was a heritage that had been thoughtfully updated for the modern world. The Wrangler YJ was a bridge between the past and the future, proving that even an old soldier could learn new tricks and, in the process, capture the hearts of a whole new generation of adventurers. It was the birth of the Wrangler, and the off-road world would never be the same. The engine options for the YJ also reflected this blend of old-school reliability and modern needs. The base engine was a 2.5-liter four-cylinder, which was a practical, fuel-efficient choice for daily driving. But for those who craved more power and torque for the trails, Jeep continued to offer the legendary 4.2-liter inline-six engine. This engine was a carryover from the CJ era and was beloved for its low-end grunt and near-indestructible nature. It was the heart of the Jeep for many enthusiasts. Then, in 1991, a major upgrade arrived, the fuel-injected 4.0-liter inline-six. This engine was a game-changer. It was smoother, more powerful, and significantly more reliable than its carbureted predecessor. It delivered 190 horsepower and became the go-to engine for the Wrangler, cementing its reputation as a powerhouse both on and off the pavement. This engine was so good, so legendary, that it would continue to power Jeeps for nearly 2 more decades. The YJ's production run lasted from 1986 all the way to 1995, and during that time it saw several special editions that are now highly sought after by collectors. There was the Islander with its vibrant sunset graphics, the Sahara with its khaki color scheme and premium features, and the Renegade, a flashy high-end model with unique body cladding and alloy wheels. These editions showed that Jeep understood its new, broader market. People didn't just want a tool for off-roading. They wanted a vehicle that expressed their personality. The Wrangler was becoming more than just a vehicle. It was a lifestyle statement. It was about fun, freedom, and individuality. Looking back, the YJ's role in the Jeep story is absolutely pivotal. It was a risky move. Changing an icon is never easy, and the initial backlash over the square headlights was real. But AMC and later Chrysler, after they purchased AMC in 1987, stuck to their vision. They understood that to survive and thrive, the Jeep brand needed to evolve. The WJ successfully navigated this tricky transition. It retained the core elements that define Jeep: unmatched off-road capability, open-air freedom, and a rugged, timeless design, while adding the safety, comfort, and on-road manners required to attract a new generation of buyers. It proved that modernized didn't have to mean compromised. The soldiers' grandsons could indeed drive their heritage, and they could do it with the air conditioning on. The WJ laid the foundation for the phenomenal success of the Wranglers that would follow, ensuring that the spirit of that original Willys Jeep would continue to conquer new trails and win new fans for decades to come. Thank you so much for joining me for this chapter in the incredible story of Jeep. It's a tale of innovation, heritage, and the enduring spirit of adventure. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the birth of the Wrangler, please hit that like button, and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode, where we'll explore how the Wrangler continued to evolve. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you own a WJ? What are your memories of the square-eyed Jeep? Share your stories with our community. Until next time, keep exploring. Welcome back to our journey through the history of Jeep. In our last chapter, we saw the birth of the CJ, the civilian Jeep that captured America's heart. But today, we're diving into the modern era. We're talking about the one, the only, the Jeep Wrangler. This is the story of how a legendary off-roader evolved, adapted, and conquered generation by generation. So buckle up as we explore the Wrangler through the decades. Our story begins in 1986, a year of big changes. American Motors Corporation, Jeep's parent company at the time, decided it was time to retire the beloved CJ line and introduce something new. Enter the WJ, the first vehicle to officially bear the Wrangler name. And boy, did it make a controversial entrance. Why two words, square headlights? To the purists, this was sacrilege. The iconic round headlights of the Willys and CJ were gone, replaced by a design that screamed the 80s. This change, along with a lower ride height and a more comfortable interior, was a deliberate attempt to civilize the Jeep, to make it more appealing to a wider, more urban audience. The WJ was wider, more stable on the road, and offered creature comforts like air conditioning. It was a Jeep you could daily drive without feeling like you just wrestled a bear. Some hardcore fans cried foul, but the market responded. The WJ sold incredibly well, proving that there was a huge appetite for a Jeep that could handle both the concrete jungle and the actual jungle. It was the bridge between the rugged past and the refined future, a necessary, if controversial, step in the Wrangler's evolution. After the WJ's run, Jeep, now under the wing of Chrysler, knew it had to win back the hearts of the traditionalists. In 1997, they unveiled the TJ, and the crowd went wild. The round headlights were back. It was a clear signal. Jeep was listening. But the TJ was far more than just a nostalgic throwback. It introduced the single most significant mechanical upgrade in the Wrangler's history, the quadricoil suspension. This replaced the old, bumpy leaf springs with a modern coil spring setup at all four corners. The difference was night and day. The TJ offered an unprecedented level of on-road comfort and off-road articulation. It could flex and crawl over obstacles like never before, while still being pleasant to drive to the grocery store. This was the generation that perfected the formula. It blended the classic, rugged look of the original Jeeps with a suspension that made it a joy to own for enthusiasts and casual drivers alike. The TJ is often hailed by many as the peak of the classic two-door Wrangler design, a perfect balance of old-school charm and modern capability. It was a home run. By the mid-2000s, the world was changing, and so were families. The demand for more space, more doors, and more safety was growing. Jeep's answer arrived in 2007 with the JK generation. This was a radical redesign. The Wrangler was bigger, wider, and for the first time ever, available as a four-door model, the Wrangler Unlimited. This was a game-changer. Suddenly, the Wrangler wasn't just a fun weekend toy. It was a legitimate family vehicle. You could fit kids, car seats, and all your gear, and still go conquer a mountain trail on Saturday. The JK was more refined than any Wrangler before it. It came with power windows and locks, a navigation system, and advanced safety features like stability control. It was a truly modern vehicle. This expansion of the lineup was a massive success. The four-door Unlimited quickly became the best-selling model, introducing a whole new generation of people to the Jeep lifestyle. The JK proved that a Wrangler could be both an uncompromising off-road beast and a practical, family-friendly SUV, which brings us to the present day, and the current generation, the JL, introduced in 2018. If the JK was about making the Wrangler more practical, the JL is about making it smarter, more efficient, and more capable than ever before. At first glance, it looks like a subtle refinement of the JK, but the changes are significant. The JL is lighter, thanks to the use of aluminum in the doors, hood, and tailgate. It's more aerodynamic well for a brick on wheels, which helps with fuel economy, and it's packed with technology. You've got a beautiful touchscreen infotainment system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, advanced driver assist systems, and clever design touches everywhere. The windshield is easier to fold down, the doors are easier to remove, and for the first time, you can get a power retractable soft top. But don't think for a second it's gone soft. The Rubicon model, with its locking differentials, electronic sway bar disconnect, and beefy tires, is the most capable production Wrangler ever built. The JL even offers new powertrain options, including a mild hybrid and the incredible plug-in hybrid 4Z, proving that tradition and forward-thinking technology can go hand in hand. From the controversial squares of the YJ to the coil-sprung revolution of the TJ, from the family-friendly revolution of the JK to the tech-infused tradition of the JL, the Wrangler story is one of constant evolution. Each generation has pushed the boundaries, adding comfort, safety, and technology. But through it all, the core spirit has remained untouched. That feeling of freedom you get with the doors off and the top down. The confidence to point its nose at a trail and know you well live that through that's the magic of the Wrangler. It's a direct descendant of the original Willys MB. A vehicle that never forgets its roots, even as it looks toward the future. It's more than just a car. It's a symbol of adventure and an icon of American ingenuity. Thank you so much for joining us on this drive through the decades of the Jeep Wrangler. What's your favorite generation? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more deep dives into automotive history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We've got plenty more stories to tell. Until next time, keep exploring. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into chapter 15 of our journey, and this one is all about the spirit of adventure. It's about that feeling you get when the pavement ends and the real world begins. It's about freedom, exploration, and a community bound together by a shared passion. We're talking about the incredible world of Jeep culture. What is it about these vehicles that captures the imagination? It's more than just metal, rubber, and gears. A Jeep is a key. It's a key that unlocks a world far beyond the city limits, a world of dirt trails, towering forests, and wide-open spaces. It's an invitation to go places most people only see in pictures. This culture isn't about having the fanciest, most expensive rig. It's about the shared wave on the highway, the helping hand on a tough trail, and the stories told around a campfire. It's a community that celebrates getting a little mud on the tires and a lot of fresh air in your lungs. At the heart of this lifestyle are the trails. These aren't just dirt roads. They are pathways to discovery. Imagine steering your Jeep through the winding trails of a national park, surrounded by ancient trees and the symphony of nature. Places like Moab in Utah, with its iconic red rock landscapes, or the dense forests of the Appalachian Mountains, offer a playground for every skill level. Each trail tells a story, a history etched into the earth. Following these paths, you're not just driving. You're connecting with the land, challenging yourself, and seeing the country from a perspective that few ever will. It's about the journey, the slow, deliberate crawl over rocks and through streams, where every turn reveals a new, breathtaking vista. And then there's the Rubicon. For those in the Jeep community, the Rubicon Trail is more than just a path. It's a legend. Nestled in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California, this 22-mile stretch is the stuff of dreams and a true test of both driver and machine. It's considered one of the most famous and challenging off-road trails in the world. Navigating the Rubicon means tackling iconic sections like the Little Sloughs and Cadillac Hill, where granite slabs and massive boulders demand precision, patience, and teamwork. It's a place where you truly become one with your vehicle. But it's not just about the obstacles. The scenery is absolutely stunning, with crystal-clear alpine lakes and panoramic views that reward every ounce of effort. Completing the Rubicon is a badge of honor, a testament to skill and perseverance, and an experience that forges an unbreakable bond between you, your Jeep, and the friends who shared the journey with you. But the adventure doesn't stop when the sun goes down. In fact, for many, that's when the best part begins. Picture this. The engine is off, the only light comes from a crackling campfire and a billion stars scattered across a jet-black sky. Your Jeep, a trusted companion, is parked just a few feet away, its silhouette a symbol of the day's accomplishments. This is the other side of Jeep life. It's the peaceful nights spent under the open sky, far from the noise and glow of the city. It's the smell of pine in the air, the taste of a meal cooked over an open flame, and the shared laughter with friends. These are the moments of quiet reflection, where you can truly disconnect from the daily grind and reconnect with what truly matters. It's a feeling of self-reliance and profound peace. You're not just a tourist passing through. You're a part of the landscape, living in harmony with nature, if only for a night. This is what we mean by freedom in motion. It's not about speed. It's about excess. It's the ability to decide on a whim to chase a sunset to the top of a mountain or to find a secluded spot by a river to call home for the weekend. Your vehicle isn't just a mode of transport. It's your partner in exploration, your base camp, and your ticket to a life less ordinary. The spirit of adventure is about embracing the unknown, pushing your boundaries, and discovering the incredible beauty our world has to offer. It's about collecting memories, not things. The tire tracks may wash away with the next rain, but the experiences, the friendships, and that feeling of pure, unadulterated freedom will stay with you forever. That right there is the heart and soul of the Jeep adventure. So, what does this spirit of adventure mean to you? Have you ever felt that pull to leave the paved roads behind? Maybe you have a favorite trail or a memorable campfire story you'd like to share. Drop a comment below. I'd love to read about your experiences and what adventure means to you. This community is all about sharing our passions, and your stories are a huge part of that. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the heart of adventure. I hope it's inspired you to get out there and explore, whether it's in a Jeep or simply by taking a new path in your own backyard. If you enjoyed this chapter of our story, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss what's next. Your support means the world and allows us to keep creating this content. Until next time, keep the spirit of adventure alive, and I'll see you on the trail. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to our series on the incredible history of Jeep. Today, in Chapter 16, we're shifting gears from the battlefield and the backroads to the silver screen and the sound waves. We'll be diving deep into how the mighty Jeep transformed from a military workhorse into a certified pop culture icon. So buckle up because this is going to be a fun ride. When you think about it, the Jeep's journey to stardom was almost inevitable. It's rugged, it's reliable, and it screams adventure. It's the perfect vehicle for a hero, an explorer, or just someone looking to escape the ordinary. It has a personality that most cars can only dream of, and Hollywood noticed. Bedtime, one of the earliest and most significant roles for the Jeep on screen, was in the legendary TV show *M*A**S*H*. Set during the Korean War, the Willys MB Jeeps were more than just background props. They were essential characters. They ferried doctors, nurses, and wounded soldiers through the muddy, unforgiving terrain. They were a lifeline, a symbol of resilience and hope in the middle of chaos. Every time you saw Hawkeye or BJ bouncing along in that olive-drab Jeep, you felt the authenticity. That vehicle was their connection to the outside world, their trusty steed in a modern war. It cemented the Jeep's image as a tough, dependable companion that would never let you down. But the Jeep wasn't just confined to war stories. As the decades rolled on, it became the go-to vehicle for adventure. Think about it. If you're rewriting a movie about exploring ancient ruins or trekking through a dense jungle, what car are you putting your hero in? It has to be a Jeep. It's visual shorthand for we're going somewhere exciting and probably dangerous. Filmmakers like Steven Spielberg understood this perfectly. In *Raiders of the Lost Ark*, a classic German-captured Jeep is at the center of one of the most iconic chase scenes in cinema history. Indiana Jones, whip in hand, chasing down the bad guys in a rugged, open-top vehicle. It's pure movie magic. The Jeep wasn't just transportation. It was a tool for adventure, an extension of Indy's own daring and resourceful character. And then, of course, there's the big one. The one that introduced the Jeep to a whole new generation. I'm talking about 1993's Jurassic Park *. Who can forget those red and gray 1992 Jeep Wrangler Saharas? They weren't just the park's tour vehicles. They were our window into a world of resurrected dinosaurs. Seeing those Jeeps cruise past the Brachiosaurus is a core memory for millions. And more importantly, the Wrangler became the hero car during that terrifying T-Rex escape. The chase scene with the T-Rex in the rearview mirror, it's legendary. That scene single-handedly sold more Wranglers than any commercial ever could. It positioned the Jeep not just as an off-roader, but as the ultimate escape vehicle, the key to surviving the impossible. It was cool, it was capable, and suddenly everyone wanted one. The Jeep's filmography is massive. From action-packed blockbusters like the Fast and Furious franchise, where a heavily modified Wrangler can be seen parachuting out of a plane, to heartfelt dramas. In the movie The Bucket List Morgan Freeman's character dreams of driving a Shelby Mustang, but what does he actually spend his final adventures in? A classic Jeep. It represents freedom and living life to the fullest. Even in comedies like Clueless Cher Horowitz, the queen of Beverly Hills fashion, drives a white Jeep Wrangler. It showed that the Jeep could be chic, that it could fit into any lifestyle, from the muddy trail to Rodeo Drive. And let's not forget the animated world. G.I. Joe, the quintessential American hero, had his own tactical Jeep, the VAMP, which stood for Multi-Purpose Attack Vehicle. For kids growing up in the 80s, that toy was everything. It brought the adventure of the Jeep right into our living rooms. In the world of comics, you'll often see characters like Captain America behind the wheel of a trusty Willys Jeep in flashback scenes to World War II, reinforcing its patriotic and heroic origins. The Jeep's influence doesn't stop with visuals. It has rolled its way into our music, too. It's a recurring theme in country music where it symbolizes freedom, a connection to the outdoors, and good old-fashioned fun. Artists sing about kicking up dust on a back road in their Jeep, windows down, music blasting. It's part of a romanticized rural lifestyle, but it's not just country. You'll hear Jeeps mentioned in rock, pop, and hip-hop songs as a status symbol or an emblem of a carefree, adventurous spirit. The word Jeep itself has a rhythm, a rugged coolness that lyricists love. So why has the Jeep had such a lasting impact on pop culture? I think it comes down to its authenticity. The Jeep is not a product of the marketing department's focus group. It was born out of necessity, forged in war, and proven in the toughest conditions on Earth. It has a genuine story, a real heritage. When you see a Jeep on screen, you believe it. You believe it can climb that mountain, cross that river, or outrun that dinosaur. Furthermore, the Jeep represents a powerful idea: freedom. The freedom to go anywhere, to do anything. The simple, functional design, especially the classic Wrangler with its removable doors and fold-down windshield, is all about breaking down the barriers between you and the world. It's an invitation to adventure. In a world that often feels complicated and confined, the Jeep is a symbol of escape and boundless possibility. It's a promise that the road doesn't have to end where the pavement does. From a black and white war film to a 4K blockbuster, from a country ballad to a Saturday morning cartoon, the Jeep has been there. It's played the hero, the sidekick, the escape vehicle, and the symbol of freedom. It's more than just a car. It's a cultural touchstone, an icon recognized and loved around the globe. Its simple, rugged charm has made it a timeless star that never seems to fade. That's all for this chapter, everyone. It's just amazing to see how a vehicle can become such an integral part of our shared stories and culture. What's your favorite movie or TV show featuring a Jeep? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to read them. Thanks so much for watching, and if you're enjoying this journey through Jeep history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. We'll see you on the trail. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our journey through the incredible history of Jeep. Today, we're diving into Chapter 17. A chapter that many of you have been waiting for. We're talking about the genesis of a true legend, a vehicle that wasn't just built by engineers, but was dreamed up by the very people who pushed their machines to the absolute limit. This is the story of the Wrangler Rubicon and the era it defined. Imagine for a moment the turn of the millennium. Off-roading is more than just a hobby. It's a passionate, thriving community. Jeep enthusiasts, the most dedicated of the bunch, are constantly modifying their Wranglers. They're adding bigger tires, stronger axles, locking differentials, and lower gear ratios, all in the quest to conquer ever more challenging terrain. They were essentially building their own ultimate off-roaders in their garages and workshops. Now, picture the engineers at Jeep watching this unfold. They saw the passion, they saw the ingenuity, and they had a brilliant idea. What if they could build a Wrangler that came straight from the factory with all these heavy-duty upgrades already installed? What if they could offer a turnkey, trail-ready machine that embodied the spirit of these custom builds, but with the added benefit of factory engineering, warranty, and reliability? It was a revolutionary concept. To build a vehicle not just asterisk for asterisk the enthusiasts, but asterisk with asterisk them in mind, inspired directly by their own creations. This idea wasn't just a fleeting thought. It became a mission. The proving ground for this new breed of Wrangler was obvious. There was one trail that stood as the benchmark for off-road capability, a place of legend whispered in hushed, reverent tones among four-wheel drive aficionados, the Rubicon Trail. Located in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California, this trail is not for the faint of heart. It's a relentless 22-mile stretch of granite slabs, massive boulders, and steep inclines. It's a place that tests a vehicle's strength, articulation, and durability to its breaking point. To conquer the Rubicon Trail in a stock vehicle was the ultimate dream. And so, Jeep engineers set their sights on this formidable challenge. Their goal was to create a Wrangler that could drive off the showroom floor, head straight to the Rubicon Trail, and conquer it without a single modification. The project was internally codenamed Rubicon, a fitting tribute to its ultimate test. This wasn't just about bolting on some bigger parts. It was a deep dive into sophisticated off-road engineering. The heart of what would become the Rubicon model lay in its specialized hardware. Let's break down what made it so special. First, the axles. The standard Dana 30 front and 35 rear axles were swapped out for heavy-duty Dana 44s front and rear. This was a massive upgrade, providing the strength needed to handle the stress of large tires and extreme obstacles. It was the kind of upgrade enthusiasts were spending thousands of dollars on in the aftermarket. Then came the lockers. The Rubicon was equipped with air-actuated locking differentials, both in the front and the rear. At the push of a button, the driver could lock the axles, forcing both wheels on an axle to turn at the same speed, regardless of traction. This feature is a game-changer on the trail. When one wheel is in the air or on a slippery surface, the other can still pull the vehicle forward. This provided a level of traction and control that was previously only available on highly modified rigs. But they didn't stop there. They addressed gearing, a critical component for slow-speed crawling. The Rubicon received a brand new transfer case, the Rocktrack NV2410R. While a standard Wrangler had a low-range gear ratio of 2.72 to 1, the Rocktrack boasted an incredibly low 4.0 to 1 ratio. This crawler gear allowed the Rubicon to move at a snail's pace, giving the driver pinpoint control when navigating technical sections. It multiplied the engine's torque, allowing the vehicle to climb over obstacles with seemingly effortless grace. Of course, a capable off-roader needs the right rubber. The Rubicon came standard with aggressive 31-inch Goodyear mud terrain tires, a significant step up from the all-terrain tires found on other models. To protect the vehicle's vulnerable underbelly, it was fitted with diamond plate rocker guards, robust steel panels that could slide over rocks without damaging the body. Even the fender flares were widened to accommodate the larger tires and provide better coverage. In 2003, the dream became a reality. The Jeep Wrangler Rubicon was unveiled, and the off-road world was never the same. It was an instant sensation. For the first time, a customer could walk into a dealership and buy a vehicle that was more capable out of the box than most modified rigs on the trail. It was a testament to Jeep's commitment to its core audience. They had listened, they had learned, and they had delivered. The Rubicon wasn't just a trim package. It was a statement. It was a declaration that Jeep understood its heritage and was dedicated to pushing the boundaries of what a production vehicle could do. The name Rubicon itself became synonymous with ultimate capability. It was a badge of honor, a symbol that this wasn't just any Wrangler. The success of the Rubicon model in the TJ generation paved the way for its continuation and evolution. When the all-new JK Wrangler was introduced in 2007, the Rubicon returned, bigger and better than before. The JK Rubicon built upon the foundation of its predecessor. It retained the core principles: Dana 44 axles, locking differentials, and a 4-to-1 low-range transfer case. But it also introduced new innovations. One of the most significant additions was the electronic sway bar disconnect system. On the road, A sway bar is essential for stability, limiting body roll during cornering. Off-road, however, it restricts suspension travel or articulation. With the push of a button, the JK Rubicon's front sway bar could be disconnected, allowing the front axle to articulate dramatically, keeping the tires on the ground and maintaining traction over uneven terrain. It was a piece of engineering genius that offered the best of both worlds, on-road stability and off-road flexibility. The JK Rubicon also grew, offering for the first time a 4-door unlimited model. This opened up the world of extreme off-roading to families and those who needed more space for gear. You could now have a vehicle that could conquer the toughest trails on Saturday and take the kids to school on Monday. The Rubicon was no longer just a hardcore toy. It was becoming a versatile adventure vehicle. As we moved into the current JL generation, the Rubicon continued its evolution. The engineering became even more refined. The axles were made stronger, the lockers became more robust, and the overall package was polished to near perfection. The JL Rubicon offered even larger factory tire options, improved suspension geometry, and a lighter, stronger frame and body. It represents the culmination of decades of off-road experience and engineering prowess. The legacy of the Rubicon goes far beyond just a single model. It changed the entire industry. T raised the bar for what a factory off-roader could be, forcing competitors to step up their game. It proved that there was a strong market for highly capable, specialized vehicles straight from the manufacturer. More importantly, it solidified the bond between Jeep and its community. The Rubicon is a rolling tribute to the enthusiasts who spent their weekends in the garage, wrenching on their rigs, dreaming of the perfect trail machine. It's a vehicle born from the dirt, granite, and mud of the toughest trails in the world. It's a quiet nod to modern craftsmanship, where a company listens to its most passionate fans and builds them the machine of their dreams. It's not just a car. It's the embodiment of a lifestyle, a symbol of freedom, and a key to unlocking adventures that most people can only imagine. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the story of the Wrangler Rubicon. It's a fascinating chapter in the Jeep saga and one that continues to be written with every new generation. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so much more to explore. Until next time, keep exploring and stay adventurous. Welcome back to our journey through the history of Jeep. We've traveled through decades of innovation, from the battlefields of World War II to the rockiest trails on Earth. Now, we arrive at the present, a new frontier where tradition meets technology head-on. This is Chapter 18, The Electric Frontier. Imagine this, you're deep in the wilderness, the sun is setting, casting long shadows through the trees. The only sounds are the chirping of crickets, the rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, and the soft crunch of tires on the trail. There's no rumble, no roar, no deep growl of a combustion engine, just a whisper. This isn't a dream. It's the reality of the Jeep Wrangler 4Z. For generations, the sound of a Jeep has been synonymous with power and adventure. It was a mechanical heartbeat, a promise of the capability that lay under the hood. But as the world changes, so does the definition of power. The Wrangler 4Z represents a monumental shift in the Jeep story, a bold step into an electrified future. It's a plug-in hybrid, or PHEV, that marries the legendary off-road prowess of the Wrangler with the silent, efficient power of an electric motor. So, what does this actually mean for the driver, for the adventurer? It means you have choices. You can start your day in full electric mode, running errands around town with zero emissions, moving in near silence. The torque from the electric motor is instant, providing a quick and responsive feel that's surprisingly zippy for a vehicle of its stature. You can commute, pick up groceries, and navigate the urban jungle without using a single drop of gasoline. It's Jeep capability, civilized for the city. But let's be honest, you don't buy a Wrangler just for city driving, you buy it for the escape. And this is where the 4Z truly shines, rewriting the rulebook for off-roading. When you leave the pavement behind and engage four-wheel drive, the hybrid system comes alive in a way that's almost magical. The combination of the electric motor and the advanced 2.0-liter turbocharged engine delivers a staggering amount of torque. We're talking about 470 pound-feet of instant rock-crawling, mud-slinging power. Think about what that means on the trail. When you're trying to navigate a tricky obstacle, you need precise control. In a traditional gas-powered vehicle, you might have to rev the engine to get into the power band, sometimes leading to a lurch or a spin of the tires. With the 4Z, the electric motor provides that torque instantly and smoothly. You can crawl over boulders with the finesse of a mountain goat, applying power with surgical precision, all while the engine is barely breaking a sweat or not even running at all. This brings us back to that sound of silence. Off-roading in electric mode is a completely transformative experience. For the first time, you can truly immerse yourself in nature without the constant drone of an engine. You can hear the snap of a twig under your tire, the call of a distant bird, the gentle gurgle of a stream you're about to cross. It's a more intimate, more respectful way to explore the great outdoors. You're no longer just a visitor making a lot of noise. You're a quiet observer, moving through the landscape with minimal disturbance. It's a connection to the environment that was never possible before. Some purists might worry that this new technology dilutes the classic Jeep spirit. They might ask, is it still a real Jeep if it can be silent? The answer is a resounding yes. The spirit of a Jeep isn't just in the noise it makes, it's in its freedom, its capability, and its unwavering will to go anywhere and do anything. The Wrangler 4Z doesn't sacrifice any of that. It's still a trail-rated beast. It can still ford water up to 30 inches deep. It still has solid front and rear axles, a full-time 4x4 system, and robust skid plates. The battery and electronics are sealed and protected, ready to take on the same harsh conditions you'd expect any Wrangler to conquer. In fact, the 4Z enhances that spirit. It gives you more freedom. The freedom to explore fragile ecosystems more responsibly. The freedom to have thrilling power on tap when you need it, and serene quiet when you don't. It's the same rugged soul, just with a quieter voice and a smarter mind. The blue tow hooks and subtle 4Z badging are the only hints of the advanced technology within. Otherwise, it carries the same iconic silhouette that has been a symbol of adventure for over 80 years. The 7-slot grille, the round headlights, the removable doors and roof. This is the genius of Jeep's evolution. They didn't tear up the blueprint. They added a new forward-thinking chapter. They understood that the future of adventure requires a new kind of power, one that is not only strong but also intelligent and conscientious. The Wrangler 4Z is the perfect embodiment of this philosophy. It's a bridge between the brand's rugged heritage and a sustainable future. Imagine a bedtime story for the modern adventurer. The hero isn't loud and boisterous, but quiet and confident. Its strength isn't measured in decibels, but in its ability to move with purpose and grace. This is the story of the 4Z. It's a tale of quiet power, but the same untamable spirit. It's proof that the greatest adventures don't always have to be the loudest. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is a whisper. This chapter in Jeep's history is far from over. It's just beginning. The electric frontier is vast and full of potential. With models like the 4Z leading the charge, Jeep is proving that you can embrace the future without letting go of the past. The roar of the engine may be replaced by the hum of an electric motor, but the call of the wild remains the same. And as always, Jeep is ready to answer. Thank you so much for joining us on this electric journey. It's been incredible sharing this story with you. If you've enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss our next chapter. We have so much more to explore together. Until next time, keep adventuring. Look at it, really, just take a moment and look at the Jeep Wrangler. What do you see? Is it a modern sport utility vehicle? Yes, in many ways it is. It has the latest technology, advanced safety features, and a level of comfort that would have been unimaginable to its ancestors. But it's also something more, isn't it? When you look at a Wrangler, you're not just seeing a car. You're seeing a silhouette, an icon, a shape that has been etched into the collective consciousness for over 80 years. It's a rolling piece of history, a direct, unbroken line connecting the battlefields of the 1940s to the open roads of today. This is the story of a design that refused to die, a look that has not just survived but thrived by staying true to its original purpose. This is the story of why the Wrangler looks the way it does, and why it will probably look this way forever. Think about other cars from the 1940s, the big curvaceous sedans, the long-hooded coupes, the wood-paneled station wagons. They are beautiful, evocative machines, but they are relics of a bygone era. You see them at car shows in museums or lovingly restored by collectors. You don't see them in your neighbor's driveway or navigating the morning commute. Their designs, once the height of fashion, now belong to the past. But the Jeep is different. Park a brand new Wrangler next to a Willys MB from World War II, and the family resemblance is not just noticeable. It is undeniable. The round headlights, the 7-slot grille, the flat fenders, the upright windshield, the open-top design, the core DNA is all there. How is this possible? In an industry defined by constant change, where designs become dated in a matter of years, how has one vehicle maintained its fundamental look for 8 decades? The answer begins with a single powerful word: function. The original Jeep was not born in a design studio. It was forged in the crucible of war. Its form was dictated entirely by its mission. It needed to be lightweight, rugged, and easy to fix. It needed to go anywhere and do anything. Those round headlights were simple, easy to produce, and provided ample light. The 7-slot grille, though it started with more slots, was designed to allow maximum airflow to the engine while offering protection. The flat fenders weren't a style choice. They were a practical surface you could sit on, put tools on, or use as a makeshift table in the field. The body panels were flat and simple because they were easier and cheaper to manufacture and repair if they got damaged. The ability to fold the windshield down wasn't for getting a better tan. It was to lower the vehicle's chest profile and make it easier to ship or to fire a weapon over the hood. Every single line and curve or lack thereof on that original Willys had a purpose. There was no room for vanity, no space for superfluous styling. It was a tool, and its design was an honest expression of its function. And here lies the first secret to its timelessness: honesty. Fads come and go. Flamboyant fins, pop-up headlights, and dramatic swoops all have their moment in the sun, but they eventually look dated because they are products of a specific time and a specific aesthetic. A purely functional design, however, transcends fashion. A hammer looks like a hammer. A good knife looks like a good knife. And a Jeep looks like a Jeep. Its form is so intrinsically linked to its capability that to change it fundamentally would be to betray its very essence. This commitment to function created an accidental icon. The soldiers who drove these vehicles across Europe and the Pacific didn't see a design statement. They saw a reliable partner, a mechanical mule that would get them through hell and back. They grew to love it not for its beauty, but for its dependability. When the war ended and these Jeeps found their way into civilian life, that love came with them. Farmers, ranchers, and adventurers bought them not because they were fashionable, but because they worked. The Jeep became a symbol of rugged individualism, of freedom, of the ability to conquer any obstacle. The look became synonymous with capability. As the years passed and the civilian Jeep, the CJ, evolved, the temptation to modernize must have been immense. Other off-road vehicles began to soften their edges, to become more car-like and aerodynamic in an effort to appeal to a broader market. But Jeep's designers understood something crucial. The look was now the brand. That simple, functional silhouette was no longer just about utility. It was about identity. It was a promise. When you saw that shape, you knew what it meant. It meant you could take the doors off. It meant you could fold the windshield down. It meant you could venture far off the beaten path, confident that your vehicle was up to the task. To change the look would be to break that promise. This is why, through the CJ5, the CJ7, and into the modern Wrangler generations, the YJ, TJ, K, and JL, the core design principles have been so fiercely protected. Of course, there have been evolutions. The infamous square headlights of the YJ in the 1980s were a brief, controversial departure, a lesson learned in real time about the power of heritage. The backlash was so strong that the round headlights made a triumphant return with the TJ and have been a non-negotiable element ever since. The grille has been tweaked, the fenders have changed shape, and the vehicle has grown larger and more refined. But these are all subtle adaptations, not radical reinventions. The designers are not so much creating something new as they are curating a legacy. Each new generation of Wrangler presents a unique challenge for its design team. How do you incorporate modern safety standards like airbags and crumple zones into a design that is fundamentally boxy? How do you improve aerodynamics for fuel efficiency without losing the iconic upright grille and flat windshield? How do you add modern conveniences and technologies without cluttering the honest, purpose-built interior? It's a delicate balancing act. They are walking a tightrope between the past and the future. Every decision is weighed against 80 years of history. The angle of the grille, the shape of the wheel arches, the placement of the door hinges, all are treated with the reverence of a museum curator restoring a priceless artifact. The result is a vehicle that feels both old and new at the same time. When you sit in the driver's seat of a new Wrangler, you are part of a continuum. The view over the flat hood, flanked by those two prominent fenders, is nearly the same view a soldier had in 1944. When you reach out and unlatch the roof, you are performing an action that has connected Jeep owners for generations. This physical connection to the past is something you simply cannot find in any other new car. It's a tangible link, a feeling that you are driving more than just a machine. You are driving a story. In a world of disposable products and fleeting trends, the Wrangler stands as a monument to endurance. Its design is a testament to the idea that if you make something honest, capable, and true to its purpose, it will never go out of style. It doesn't need to shout to be heard. It doesn't need to change with the seasons to be relevant. Its quiet confidence comes from a deep-seated knowledge of what it is and where it came from. It is functional, it is iconic, and it is honest. It is a rolling piece of history that allows us, in some small way, to touch the past every time we get behind the wheel. The Wrangler's design hasn't remained unchanged in spite of the passing of 80 years. It has remained unchanged because of it. And that is the very definition of timeless. Soft, reflective music begins, with ambient sounds of nature, a gentle breeze, distant birds. Hello, and welcome back. We've journeyed a long way together, haven't we? Through the crucible of war, across decades of innovation, and over countless miles of untamed terrain. Now we arrive at our final chapter, Chapter 20, the legacy of freedom. But this isn't an ending. It's a reflection. It's an attempt to capture something that's almost impossible to put into words, a feeling. An idea, a promise that has been passed down through generations. It's the spirit of the Jeep. To truly understand this legacy, we must go back to the beginning one last time. Picture it. The world is at war. Mud, thick and grasping, takes the battlefields of Europe. It clings to boots, bogs down heavy machinery, and swallows hope. In the midst of this chaos, a small, stubborn vehicle appears. It's not much to look at, just a simple frame, 4 wheels, and an engine that refuses to quit. But it does something miraculous. It moves. It goes where others can't. It carries soldiers, supplies, and messages through the muck and the mire. It becomes a lifeline. In those desperate moments, that little vehicle wasn't just a machine. It was a promise of mobility. It was a symbol that no obstacle was insurmountable. It was, in its most raw and fundamental form, a taste of freedom. Freedom from being stuck. Freedom to push forward. Freedom to overcome. The soldiers who drove it, who relied on it, they didn't just see a utility vehicle. They saw a partner. A tough, reliable friend who would get them through the darkest of times. They gave it a name that would echo through history. The Jeep. When the guns fell silent and the world began to heal, those soldiers returned home. They brought with them memories, scars, and a profound appreciation for the simple, rugged vehicle that had served them so well, and the Jeep came home with them. It shed its olive-drab skin and donned the vibrant colors of civilian life. But it never lost its spirit. The battlefields of war were replaced by the farmlands of America. The mud of trenches became the fertile soil of a nation rebuilding. The Jeep went to work, plowing fields, hauling crops, and helping to construct a new future. It was no longer just about survival. It was about building a life. It was about the freedom to prosper, the freedom to create, the freedom to carve out a piece of the world and call it your own. It became the backbone of the heartland, a testament to American ingenuity and resilience. But the story doesn't end on the farm. As the post-war years gave way to an era of prosperity and exploration, the Jeep found a new calling. The cities were growing, the suburbs were sprawling, and a generation was yearning for something more. They looked towards the horizon, towards the mountains, the deserts, the forests, the places on the map marked unexplored. They sought a different kind of freedom. Not the freedom from conflict, but the freedom asterisk to asterisk adventure. And there was the Jeep, ready for the call. With the introduction of models like the CJ series, it became the quintessential adventure vehicle. It was the key that unlocked the great outdoors. Imagine the scene. A family packing up their Wagoner for a weekend camping trip. The kids' faces pressed against the glass, watching the city skyline disappear in the rearview mirror. Or a group of friends, young and full of life, taking their Wrangler up a winding mountain road, the top down, the wind in their hair, a classic rock song on the radio. Each turn of the wheel was a turn away from the ordinary. Every mile logged was a step further into the wild. The Jeep wasn't just transporting people from point A to point B. It was transporting them from the mundane to the magnificent. It became a vessel for memories, a catalyst for connection with nature and with each other. It taught us that the world was vast and beautiful, and that the greatest adventures were waiting just beyond the end of the pavement. The freedom it offered was the freedom of discovery. Decades rolled by. The world changed, technology evolved, and the Jeep evolved with it. It became more comfortable, more capable, more refined. But through all the updates and redesigns, one thing remained constant: its soul. The 7-slot grille became more than just a design element. It became a symbol, a badge of honor. It was a silent promise that no matter how modern the vehicle became, the spirit of that original, tough-as-nails Army Scout was still alive within its steel frame. This legacy is not something you can quantify with horsepower ratings or torque figures. It's a feeling you get when you sit behind the wheel. It's the sense of empowerment, the knowledge that you can go anywhere, do anything. It's the camaraderie you feel when you pass another Jeep on the road and exchange that subtle, knowing wave. It's a nod of mutual respect, an acknowledgement that you're both part of the same tribe. A tribe of adventurers, dreamers, and free spirits. Think about the stories that have been told from the driver's seat of a Jeep, the first dates, the cross-country road trips, the quiet moments spent watching a sunset from a remote overlook. It has been a silent witness to generations of life's most precious moments. A grandfather teaching his grandchild to drive in an old beat-up CJ on a dusty farm road. A father and son bonding over a wrench set as they restore a classic Cherokee in their garage. A mother taking her daughter to the beach for the first time, the salty air whipping through the open windows of their Wrangler. These are the threads that weave the fabric of the Jeep legacy. It's a story written not in ink, but in tire tracks on muddy trails, in the dust collected on a dashboard after a desert run, in the laughter shared around a campfire with the Jeep parked nearby like a faithful watchdog. It's a companion, a tool, a memory maker. And so we find ourselves here, on a peaceful mountain road. The engine hums a quiet, steady rhythm. The air is crisp and clean. Below, the world unfolds like a map of possibilities. From the muddy battlefields of the past to this tranquil, sun-drenched peak, the journey has been long. But the message has always been the same. Voice becomes softer, more whisper-like. The Jeep has always meant freedom. It is the legacy whispered on the wind that rustles through the pines. It's the resilience of a nation forged in fire. It's the enduring spirit of adventure that calls to us from the wild. It's a companion through the generations, a constant in an ever-changing world. It is a symbol of an open road, an open sky, and an open heart. A symbol that the greatest journey is the one that leads you back to yourself, out here in the vast, beautiful, open world. The legacy of freedom lives on in every turn of the key and every mile of the adventure that lies ahead. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the history and heart of the Jeep. It's been an honor to share these stories with you.